Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. As you can see, I'm joined by the Twitch chat, and today is another review of a Battletome. The brand new Soulblight Gravelords Battletome has been released, and this will be a full review. We'll go through every single rule, all of the war scrolls, and everything else, and hopefully, with this video, you'll learn how to play the army, or at least learn some fun combos and what some of the stuff means. So hopefully this is really useful if you're a beginner or if you're an experienced player. Hope you enjoy it. If you do like it, like and subscribe. I'm supported by everyone on Patreon and the Twitch chat, who are going to make jokes through the day, and hopefully we're going to have a great time. The first thing we're going to look at are the allegiance abilities. These you can see here. They're called battle traits. Allegiance abilities are called battle traits. You see at the top. So when you build a Soulblight Gravelords army, you get access to these battle traits. These are just free rules for your army, and there's a couple of them. The first thing they do is they talk about the different sub-factions that you get to choose. After you've built your army, or probably before you even build your army, you choose one of those sub-factions. There's Legion of Blood, Legion of Night, the Vyrkos Dynasty, nailed it, Kastelai Dynasty, and the Avengorii Dynasty. Then you have some battle traits. So these are the special rules that apply to your army. First one is Endless Legions, and this is already a fantastic rule. I'm reading this a couple of days after it's kind of been leaked on the internet, and already there's been a lot of conversation about how strong or how good the book may be. But let me tell you that this is already an engaging, fun, and interactive rule that you're going to get to use a lot, so I already like it loads. What do you get to do with this? Well, at the end of the movement phase, and that's your movement phase or your opponent's movement phase, you get to return or pick a slain Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit. And now there are some heroes that are also going to be summonable units, which you're going to be able to return as well. So your summonable units and your hero summonable units. Here's the quick list. Here's a quick list of what they are. Death Rattle Skeletons, Sepulchral Guard, Grave Guard, King Morlach and the Sons of Velman, my favorite indie band. Bats, Wolves, Zombies, Black Knights, White King, plus the White King on Skeletal Steed, and also Kritza. So all of those, okay? So you can return them. Pretty exciting, okay? So that's if they've slain. A unit's been slain, so we're going to take Skeletons, for example, first, and then a White King on Steed. Skeletons have been slain, bosh, and let's say there was 20 of them. Then on a 4+ in your opponent's turn, you get to return them. On a 3+ in your turn. So it's 4+, 3+. Same with the White King on Skeletal Steed. There's a slight difference between the two, though. When you return a unit, like Skeletons, when you return that unit, that is a like replacement unit. Therefore, it doesn't have any like upgrades or other stuff that it may have had on before it was slain. You also then can't heal it up because it's a replacement unit that starts at 10 because it was previously 20, and it has to return at half. So it's half when you return it. So that unit of 20 gets returned on a 3+ in your turn or a 4+ in your opponent's turn at the end of the movement phase. Now, here's where it gets really, really nutty. Here's where it gets really nutty. When you return them, you have to set them up wholly within 12 inches of a gravesite or a Soulblight Gravelords hero. You can put 4 gravesites out. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you can set them up within 3 inches of your opponent's units. So it has to be outside of 3, but just outside of 3, but no closer. And that's amazing. So what this really means is, because at the end of the movement phase, if they have a unit that moves towards your lines, then you can redeploy away. Then you can summon a unit as a screen in front of your army, which is crazy. Now, there are some weaknesses. You aren't going to be able to make a charge, pile in the same turn, but it effectively means you can just keep summoning screens, which is really, really powerful for what is going to be an all-melee army. So really good. So that's the first bit. Being able to return summon units and when you can return them and how close you can return them is already fantastic. The other bit is about heroes. So unlike when you return a unit, which is a replacement unit, when you return the hero, it's the same hero. So you return, if they had command traits and they were your general, they're still your general, they still have command traits, they still have artifacts, they have any other upgrades, which is awesome. When you do return them, and it's written here in quite a wordy way, and a way that I think might need some clarity, but you return them with 3 wounds taken. So that's kind of weird. Like, I would think that it might get FAQ'd to being returned with 3 wounds remaining, but as written, I think it's probably with 3 wounds taken, which is an odd thing, but there we go. Okay, but this is also really great as well. This is a great first rule. It means if your general's on the board and he gets taken out by something, you can return him, which is honestly fantastic. It's not every hero, so you can't do a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, but you can do a White King on Steed, and that's awesome. So that's great. So returning slain units, returning heroes, very cool. Especially the most important part is that you can return them so close. You can return them so close to the enemy to create screens and move things around, which is nuts. The next thing is the Unquiet Dead. This just talks about setting up grave sites. You're able to set up 4 grave sites, which is quite important. You set up 2 in your territory and 2 anywhere else on the board. They have to be an inch away from objectives, but those big pie plates or those big like perspex discs that you may have seen for objectives, even though that's a big 12-inch kind of circle, that isn't the objective. The objective is just a point in the middle of the battlefield where it says on your battle plan where it is. So you can set within an inch of that, which means you can effectively set up on the objectives, which is amazing. So that's great. Also, you get to put 4 of them out. Love that. And then the follow-up is that you get to set up reserve units inside those grave sites. So for every unit you deploy on the board, so I put 1 unit down, I can put another unit inside the grave sites, and then they can pop up. But when they pop up, they have to pop up in your movement phase, and they have to pop up more than 9 inches from all enemy units, which is super important. And it's not just in your movement phase, sorry. To be specific, it's at the end of your movement phase. So it's like a deep strike. Like, it always sounds a bit weird, but it's effectively you can deep strike, but you have to deep strike wholly within 12 inches of your gravesite and 9 inches away from the enemy. But this is great because you've got a lot of room in that area. Like, wholly within 12 inches from that point on the board is actually quite big. So love that. And that's really good. And it means that you can just pop up and do some deep strikes. You can do some like early charges if you want to. Really useful if you have a summonable hero, so they can go and do battle tactics, which is really nice as well. So a bunch of really fun and engaging things there. So you're actually a little bit more mobile than maybe the War Scrolls are going to say. And then finally you got Deathly Invocation. What this does is this returns, you pick 3 summonable units, wholly within 12 inches of a Soulblight Gravelords hero, and you can heal up to 3 wounds allocated to that unit. So you can basically either heal 3 wounds or return 3 models of up to 1 wound each. If you're wholly within 12 inches of a gravesite, then you get to add +1 to that. So 3 + 1 = 4. This is pretty cool as well. If you're taking, like, it's 3 units. It's not the same unit 3 times, but it's 3 different units. And those 3 different units can all get almost up to 4. And that's crazy. That's crazy. 12 wounds healing, return heroes, return slain units. That's not bad. Honestly, that's not bad. Like, especially for those heroes that, like, you've just brought back from the dead and then you heal 3 wounds into them immediately is quite nice. So I'm not going to sniff at that at all. I think that's very, very good. And then finally you got Deathless Minions, which is a 6+ ward save for everyone in your army. You don't have to be near a hero, which is what it was previously. You don't have to be near like a unit. It's just everyone's got a 6+ ward save, which is like a little bit of a nothing because everything in the new books, so like kind of the new wave of books over the past few months, seem to have got a 5+ ward save. But 6+ ward save is good. It's the start because you should have a lot of wounds in the Soulblight Gravelords army. So that 6+ ward save is going to increase how many wounds you have. You're much more of an attrition army, probably, than you ever are kind of like a glass cannon army. But we haven't got to the War Scrolls yet, so that might change. Anyway, those are your battle traits. Now we're going to go look at some of the sub-faction. The first sub-faction we're going to look at is the Legion of Blood, the courtiers of Queen Neferata, and her inner circle are expected to excel in all manner of disciplines, be they martial or mystical, but they can't do them both at the same time. So, if you have a Legion of Blood vampire hero, so the word vampire will be in the keywords, which you can find at the bottom of a War Scroll, that's where you'll find it. Legion of Blood means that you've just chosen that as your sub-faction, is within 3 inches. So if you've got a vampire hero and you're in Legion of Blood, you're within 3 inches of the enemy, then you get +1 attack to all your melee profiles. This is especially good if you have units with multiple melee profiles. For example, Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, or Dragoon, or or a Vengorian Lord, a Vengo Lord. Yeah. So if you're in range, but if you're outside of 3 inches, you get +1 to cast, unbind, and dispelling rolls, which is particularly good because Neferata is a really, really good caster. So this is really great. I like that a lot. Okay. So then you've got some heroic actions that you can only do inside Legion of Blood, and one of them is very good. But they're both very useful. What's good about them being heroic actions versus command abilities or versus, let's say, an artifact or a command trait is that you get to choose when these happens. And that's really good because really the power of a book and the strength of a book often is in people having options to do things when they want to do things. These are also good because you don't have to roll for them. So this isn't like on a 3+ you do a raw. This is just you do them, which is also really powerful. Heroic actions can also be done in each person's hero phase. So that's also really useful as well because you can maybe use some of them. So we'll talk about that. First one is premeditated bloodshed. And I got to say, I feel like I'm going to see this used a lot. Pick one friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero. Until the end of the turn, ward rolls cannot be made for wounds and mortal wounds caused by attacks made by this hero. Now, don't forget, spells don't count as attacks, so it's going to be shooting attacks and close combat attacks. But a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, or indeed a Vengorian Lord, which are big fighty monsters, so they're melee monsters, are going to love this, especially because you can choose. Again, it's not an artifact that I've taken in case I come up against something with ward saves, but instead, it's something that has a ward save in front of me and is normally an issue, but now premeditated bloodshed, no issue, right? And it's just phenomenal. So I love that. Just really, really good. And then you have the Immortal Majesty. Pick one friendly Legion of Blood vampire hero until the end of this turn. Your opponent must spend 2 command points instead of 1 to issue all-out defense and Inspiring Presence commands to enemy units within 12 inches. This feels particularly good if you're going second in a turn because your opponent is maybe going to be very light on CP because they've spent a couple in the previous turn. You don't tend to get a lot of CP and Age Sigmar command points. And so at this point, they're like, I'm going to hold on to that 1 for the Inspiring Presence on that unit. And then you're like, no problem. I'm going to Immortal Majesty, do some damage here and there. And then it's a big aura as well. It's 12 inches. This is, again, fantastic. The all-out defense one is good because you are going to be active. You're going to be fighting. That's what your army does. But Inspiring Presence, amazing. Like, both of those are situationally incredible. Your opponent can't stop it, which is, like, again, really powerful in-game. And just really good. Both of them are fantastic. Legion of Blood, very good so far. Right, so we're going to talk about the command traits and artifacts for the Legion of Blood exclusively. The first two, Tailored Downfall and Game Hunter, are really not worth talking about. I could go through them, but let's just skip straight to the best one, which is the Doomed Minions. So this is a command trait, so this will be on your general. This is after deployment before the first battle round begins. You pick up to D3 enemy units that are not heroes or monsters. So you just choose some of their big units. And this is really good because unless someone's building like a hero hammer list, like Archeon, for example, like this is going to give you access to being able to pick out their 3 major heavy hitters. And of course, it's a D3, not 3. So you might only roll 1, which is a bit sad. But the buff you get is crazy. Attacks made with melee weapons that target that unit hit on a 2+ if your general is within 3 inches. So again, if we take someone who is like a combat character like a Vengorian Lord or a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and we charge them in, they're within 3 inches of a unit, maybe a couple of units. But the unit that's next to them, let's say Graveguard, now all just hit on 2s. You don't have to do all-out attack. You don't have to do anything like that to make them hit better. And also, the Vampire and Zombie Dragon will also hit on 2s. There's currently a question as to whether or not the mount would hit on 2s. I personally think that they would, but it's definitely something that would be nice to get an FAQ. But of the 3, that's just so overwhelmingly better than the other 2 that that's the one I think that you're going to see all the time because it creates some incredible combos that you can pick as certain units and you could just bully the hell out of them, right? So just phenomenal stuff. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. The next one is the Artifacts of Power, and you've got some great Artifacts of Power. We'll start with, in my opinion, the best one, the Amulet of Screams. And this is mainly because you can hear the sound of 1,000 Tzeentch players screaming as they watch this review. You roll a dice each time an enemy unit within 18 inches of the bearer successfully casts a spell. On a 3+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. This is effectively, every time they cast a spell, they miscast and take D3 mortal wounds. This is horrific for loads of armies, but especially, this is a Cygor, but I already said Cygor was the most meta-warping unit in the game. This now is an artifact that's going to be meta-warping. It's just more spellcasts mean D3 mortal wounds. This means it's just very, very good. Very good, right? I really like it, in my personal opinion. And it's going to massively affect loads of different units and armies. So crazy good. And then you've got Orb of Enhancement. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer and roll dice. On a 3+, that hero cannot be picked to fight in that phase. That's actually quite good in the right situation if we enter into a monster hero meta. So loads of Archeons running around, loads of Nagash running around, loads of Alariels running around. It's pretty good. But overall, not as good as Amulet of Screams, because Amulet of Screams is more effective more of the time. And then we've got Cloak of Misted Shadows, which is you ignore the modifiers, positive and negative, to save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. This is quite good because you can have a 3-up Ethereal Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon. I mention that a lot right now because normally whenever you add an enhancement, so a command trait or an artifact, you're normally looking for like the largest pool that you can add it to. Same as when you can cast a spell. If I can add +1 to wound on a unit and I've got a unit of 3 with 9 attacks or a unit of 30 with 90 attacks, it's just more effective, and that's the economies of scale. So I'll talk about monster heroes a lot because this book's got some good ones. Ignore modifiers is crazy good because you can just ignore or rend. I kind of think it's a bit situational because in some cases you may want to just have a Mystic Shield, All-Out Defense, and Finest Hour so that you can be, if someone doesn't have very good rend, you can effectively be on a 2-up save because it doesn't let you add positive modifiers. So it's kind of okay, but like if you go into a big meta with lots of rend in, then sure, that one's a good too. So, but the Amulet of Screams and the Doom minions are standout. Like Doom minions is game changing. Amulet of Screams is game changing. What's crazy is you can put that on a hero that then doesn't die, that then dies, and then you rally it back using the battle trait. Well, don't rally it. Sorry, that's a special thing. But you bring it back to life. And then your opponent's like, oh no. And then you just do the same thing again. Is brilliant. Absolutely love it. So great artifacts. I mean, they don't have a range of good artifacts. They don't have a range of good command traits. You literally have 1 good command trait and 2 good artifacts. But, still decent. Carstein. Literally the person who caused the old world to be destroyed. What do you get? You get Ageless Cunning, which is once per turn during the enemy charge phase. After an enemy unit finishes charge move, pick 1 friendly Legion of Night unit within 12 inches and more than 3 inches of one enemy units that unit can attempt to charge. So effectively, during the enemy charge phase, if a unit charges nearby but doesn't charge into your unit, you can countercharge them. It's only 1 unit, which is an issue, I guess, because you can't do it with multiples of your army, but it's a countercharge, which for a melee-focused army is really, really nice. It means you can set up a unit nearby for your opponent to charge, and then you can charge them. So you can do some real nice counterplay here, especially setting up like a bait or a screen, and then you can charge it. So that's quite a nice battle trait. I'd say it's not as good as the other battle traits, but like this is quite a good one. Then you've got Swift Form, which is a heroic action, which is incredibly, incredibly annoying. It is, you pick 1 friendly Legion of Night vampire hero more than 3 inches from all enemy units, and you remove that unit from the battlefield, and they basically just have to teleport them somewhere. They have to be 9 inches away. So this is a heroic action, and it's done by a Legion of Night vampire hero. Why is this super annoying? So in your opponent's turn, if they're looking to charge you, the hero phase is going to happen first. So it's your opponent's turn. Like you've charged in your turn, you've wiped out a unit. There's no units within 3 inches of your unit. So then what happens is they take their turn. They're like, right, okay, going to kill that vampire hero. And you're like, no problem, heroic action, teleport away. Super annoying. Really, really annoying. You can't move in the following movement phase, which is fine, because even if you want to do it in your turn and do the teleport and then try the 9-inch charge, can't move, you won't be able to move anyway because it's a teleport. So it doesn't really affect, there's no negatives to this versus regular teleports, but it also means you get to teleport away in your opponent's turn, which is literally crazy. Like it's so good for making it so that they can't kill your character, which is super annoying, especially if you then teleport. Yeah, you don't have to roll for it. It just automatically happens. And then it also means you get to set up to potentially do an Ageless Cunning charge later, which is amazing because you can use that. So teleport away and then use the ability to countercharge with that same unit is nuts, right? So there's that. The final one is a monstrous action that's only you're only able to do on a zombie dragon or a Terrorgeist. And this effectively means you've got to roll a bunch of dice if a unit charges you, and you can do an extra standard shoot, assuming you've done a standard shoot. But you can effectively do a shooting attack with either the Pestilent Breath or the Death Streak thing. Situational, probably a bit useless. probably just do Stomp or Roar. You're probably not going to have a Zombie Dragon or Terrorgeist anyway. I don't know how good they are yet, but like this is a nothing burger. But the Swift Form and Ageless Cunning combo seems quite interesting. Or just Ageless Cunning itself, as in the ability to countercharge your opponent's turn, is really good because you can do like big blocks and charge in and countercharge. And that's very effective if you can do it well, which is cool. So for the Legion of Night, we have the command traits and artifacts of power. 3 and 3, like all of the others. So what do we have for the command traits that you use for your general? You've got Above Suspicion, which lets you put a unit into Deep Strike, or your general specifically into Deep Strike, which is fine, but you've got a very fast character, so he probably won't take this. You've got the Bait, which feels like the one that you're going to use, which is crazy. While this general is on the battlefield, you add 1 to save rolls and ward rolls for attacks that target friendly Legion of Night summonable units for the first battle round. This is especially amazing, obviously because you can pop them out of grave sites. There's not a range on this, which is really good. So this means +1 save and +1 ward aura for everyone in range is amazing. Very, very effective. Like, just very, very good. Like, and it stops what we call an alpha, so like a first turn like amount of damage. Like, is it going to? It doesn't stop all damage, but it makes your army much more survivable, and that's really great. So that's huge. And the only thing that I think might be better or as good, like a side grade, is Unbending Will, which is models in a friendly Legion of Night summonable unit count as 2 models instead of 1 for the purposes of contesting objectives while they're within 12 inches of the general, wholly within. So this is kind of okay. This is a little bit more difficult to organize because you obviously need your general to get them wholly within. This does mean you can capture objectives much easier than your opponent is expecting, and you can just have really high numbers on being able to hold objectives, which feels very good. This maybe is a little bit too difficult to organize that maybe you won't see it, and the Bait feels like very much like you don't have to think too much, but it also only affects summonable units. So it isn't going to affect like some of your characters or some of your big heavy hitters. So while it's good, it's not it's not army wide. So at least it's got some restrictions, which I think is a thing. Okay, and then you got the artifacts of power. You got Shard of Night, which you ignore the negative modifiers for save rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target the bearer. So this means that you ignore the rend, but you can add positive saves, which feels like this is a very good one, especially for a very important character that you want to keep alive. This one's quite good. You've got Chiroptin Cloak. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by a melee weapon, the target's bearer is a 1, the attacking unit suffers a mortal wound. This is always one of those combos that you feel like you desperately want to try and achieve. Like, buff up a unit so it's very, very survivable. Send it into a unit that's going to do like 60 attacks. And then the ones they roll, they're going to take a mortal wound. It kind of feels nice, but like it's only situational. If you come up against like all Stonehorns, they're not going to roll a lot of dice. Therefore, they're not going to roll a lot of ones. It requires you being hit, which in a game of Warhammer, you're going to want to try and hit people. And then you've got more. So I'm not into that. But then you've got Morbeg's Claw, which is in your hero phase. If the bearer is more than 3 inches from all enemy units, you could say they will carve sigils into the ground, which is quite cool. But you get to add 2 to the casting rolls for friendly Legion of Night wizards wholly within 12 inches. However, the bearer cannot make a normal move, run, retreat, charge until your next hero phase. So they're just stuck there, which I think is quite interesting. But if there is a way to build like a castle spellcasting list, so you build some defensive screens and you send a bunch of spells out, then Morbeg's Claw is pretty cool because +2 to cast is really good. If you cast Chronomantic Cogs, so you +2 re-rolling to cast, then you could do some incredibly powerful spellcasting. The real question is whether or not the book has the power to do that spellcasting, which we're going to find out later in this video. Cute little idea, though, is if you do take the Morbeg's Claw and the wizard that you put it on is a vampire, you can use the heroic action to just teleport them out, which is really fun, and just get them out of the way. I mean, it's a cute little trick. Like, is it super useful? Don't know. But like ultimately, this is a very interesting faction. And I'd love to know what you all think. Vyrkos Dynasty next. So this is the Ulfen Khan, or the Cursed City sub-faction. So it's got loads of unique characters. And normally you can't give unique characters command traits or artifacts, but they have done something to address that in this book, which is quite good. So here we go. Let's talk about the battle traits. The battle trait that you get for Vyrkos, though, is trash. It's just you can fight at the same time as another Vyrkos unit. So your hero fights, and then another Vyrkos unit can fight, but like if they're engaged, but it's a nothing burger. Like, and then you can't chain activate those. Like, it'll come up and it might be useful. Obviously, you could do it with like a Vampire Lord and another unit, so you get like a double activation, which is quite fun. But for some people, like for instance, Lumineth, they always get like a double strike versus needing to be in range. So this is like not very good. But you get some very, very cool heroic actions. You get two. Pack Alpha, which allows you to pick a friendly Deadwalkers unit. So that would be, at the time of recording, it would be direwolves, it will be zombies, and, because they haven't thought this through, corpse carts. Now, don't go and buy loads of corpse carts, because that'll get FAQ'd. But you can currently add D3 corpse carts to a unit, which you shouldn't do, because that is not, that's going to get changed. Right, okay? But being able to turn D3 doggos is quite good. So direwolves, because that's up to 6 wounds back in a unit, which is quite nice, which obviously you can stack with the ability to bring back models and units that we saw earlier in the battle traits. And then you've got Kin of the Wolf. This is one you can only do once per battle, but it allows you to summon a unit of direwolves. So you get to add 20 wounds or 130 points to your army. This army doesn't necessarily have summoning. Obviously it does. It has recycling, so it has units that were killed and be returned, and it's got healing. So it does have like the ability to have a more like level tempo than some other armies. But being able to have 2,130 points on the board at the start of the game isn't going to be much of a difference, but I guess it's still quite nice. So I quite like that. I think that's quite good. 10 doggos is pretty nice. Going on to the command traits. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is the first time we've seen this. You're allowed to add these command traits to unique characters, so named characters, where normally you aren't allowed to do this. So you've got Driven by Death Stench, which is units wholly within 9 inches, you get to re-roll charges. That's fine. That's okay. You've got Hunter's Snare, which is, I mean, good for a combat army that wants to do fighting all the time, but it doesn't necessarily do economies of scale. Command traits and artifacts, you're always looking for a huge like uptick in effectiveness, because you can only choose one. Then you've got Hunter's Snare. For the purposes of contesting objectives, this general counts as a number of models equal to their wounds characteristic. Particularly good if you take a big Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon, for example, run it around, then you've got a lot of wounds on an objective and you can keep being fairly mobile. It's okay. And then you've got Spore Trackers at the start of the hero phase. Friendly Deadwalkers units wholly within 9 inches of the general can make a normal move up to 3 inches. And this is each one of your hero phases, I would say. And it's your hero phase, not your opponent's hero phase. I would say this is very good. This makes your zombies faster, makes your doggos faster. This is a very, very good one, in my personal opinion, and the one you can see much, because movement is king in Age of Sigmar. And then you've got Artifacts of Power, so Trophies of the Hunt. Ulfenkarn Phylactery adds 1 to the ward rolls of Vyrkos summonable units for the purpose of Deathless Minions battle trait. Now, this is important to remember. If something else gives someone a ward save, this one only adds +1 to the ward rolls for Deathless Minions units. To the Deathless Minions ward roll. So +1 to the Deathless Minions ward roll, not other ward rolls. So that's important. But that's still really, really good, because you're going to have 5-up ward save, potentially 60 wounds worth of direwolves in your army for not many points is crazy. That makes him very effective, especially when you can put D3 back in the turn. You can also heal from other sources. That one's very, very good in my opinion. And I think you'll see that a lot. This one's very, very good. Then you've got Terminus Cloak at the start of the enemy hero phase. You can say the bearer will stop the Terminus Clock. And if you do so, it's the Terminus Clock. And if you do so, roll dice on a 3+ to the end of that phase, subtract 1 from casting rolls for enemy wizards. You're not going to take that. You're definitely always going to run for the Amulet of Screams, which we saw earlier, because you're going to just blow up enemy wizards, which is crazy. And then you've got the Standard of Ulfenwatch. If the bearer's on the battlefield, you can roll a dice each time your opponent spends a command point. On a 4+, you receive a command point. That's not really bad. It's not terrible. It's not overly good either. It's fine. You just get a lot of CP, which is always useful. And maybe if I was trying to get multiple artifacts, I would definitely try and maybe get the Standard of Ulfenwatch. But like, the +1 ward save is what we call a good economy of scale artifact that's going to uptick. So you're definitely going to take the Ulfankani Phylactery, which is very good because you get to say that to your opponent all the time. You're like, okay, so I've got an artifact. It's called the Ulfankani Phylactery. And they'll be like, that's weird, bro. That's weird, which is good. And you're probably going to take the command trait Spore Trackers. But if you think something different, I'd love to hear about it on playing it. So what does it do? So your battle trait is the Might of the Crimson Keep. At the end of the combat phase, if any enemy models, so it's very easy, you don't have to kill a unit. If any enemy models are slain by attacks made in melee with a Kastelai vampire unit, then you can pick one of the relevant abilities across from it to apply to that friendly unit for the rest of the battle. If more than one of those abilities opposite would apply to that unit, you must pick which ability that unit gains. The unit cannot gain the same ability more than once per battle. Okay, what does this mean? There are 3 abilities, right? Each combat phase, if you kill any models, you can gain one of them. So if you would like to gain all 3, which you can do, then it's going to require you to have fought 3 kind of consecutive consecutive phases, and you're going to need to have killed an enemy model. Super simple, right? Really easy. Okay, what do you get? We'll start small. If you kill a model that has a wounds characteristic of 2 or less, then you add +1 inch to that unit's move characteristic. This is like a nothing burger, but like might come in handy, whatever. Then you've got, and could be really funny as well, because you've got like the option to potentially fight quite a bit. So being able to add like +5 inches to your movement is legitimately very funny. So I quite like that. Then you've got one if the same model has a wounds characteristic of 3 or more, but it was not a hero or monster, then you get to add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapons. So this is if you fight like a monstrous hero or a monstrous cavalry unit. Monstrous heroes and monstrous cavalry units like sometimes just don't exist in an enemy army, so it's a buff you maybe can't get, but they can be fairly common. So this is quite good, +1 attack. And then the best one is if you slay an enemy hero or monster, then you get bloody strength and you get +1 to your damage characteristic of that unit's melee weapons. Now, you can't do this multiple times, so you can't get multiple +1 damages, but I love the idea of +1 damage, +1 attack. This could make a unit of, let's say, 10 Blood Knights, because they have the vampire keyword, very, very effective. Again, this only affects vampires and vampire units, and you're going to have to keep track of all those extra buffs on your units, which can be a little bit of a problem. But there we go. Like, quite cool little buff for vampires. Then they have a unique heroic action called the Masters of Retaliation. This is if you're already engaged in combat, so if you're within 3 inches of an enemy unit, then your opponent, don't forget you do this in the hero phase, if your opponent damages you in any phase, right, then you get to roll a dice, and on a 2+, you do D3 mortal wounds to enemy units within 3 inches. So this is an incredibly specific situation where your character is locked in combat, and then your opponent decides they're going to attack you in multiple phases with, I don't know, some shooting and some combat, and then you survive all of that, and then on a 2+, you can do D3 mortal wounds to people around you, which is kind of okay, but it's not something I'm that bothered about. However, the the monstrous action is really good. You take a monster, and then you get to add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by this unit for the following combat phase. That one's great. +1 to wound is a great buff, because -1 to wound is a great debuff. So Battle Craze is a really good monstrous action. It's a bit of a problem because monsters are so good, especially with things like Roar. Being able to stop people doing command abilities is very effective. So, but that is good. Much better than the heroic action, which I don't really like. I do love the idea of the Might of the Crimson Keep, the vampires eating stuff and getting stronger. I would have liked it so that they could have just stacked them. I think that would have been very, very funny. I would have really enjoyed that. I've just realized now in saying that you can never keep adding +1 inch to the movement because you can't stack it. So that thing I said literally moments ago, you can't do. So that's wrong. But you absolutely can. So you can get all 3, but it'd be really fun if you could stack them, because that would be quite funny, and your opponent would have to be like really conscious of that. But like, oh, I can't let him kill another hero, so he's going to get another +1 damage. That would have been very fun. All right, let's go look at the artifact, shall we? Okay, so looking at the command traits and the artifacts, you can get Swift and Deadly, which you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Kastelai units while they're wholly within 12 inches of the general. This is good. This is fine for a combat army. You want reroll charges. Doesn't cost you CP. This is okay, but doesn't stack particularly well. Then you've got Undead Blade Lord, which is once per turn if this general on the battlefield, when a vampire unit gains an ability with the Might of the Crimson Keep. So when you kill a model, like we just talked about before, this general has not got that ability, you gain it. So effectively, you can send other units out to gain abilities for your general, which is kind of okay. Don't hate that, but like that's kind of fun. Means they can just stack it and then you can run in later with all of your buffs, which is interesting. Then you've got the Shifting Keep, which effectively allows you to put Blood Knight units into reserve during deployment. And then when they do deep strike, they have to do what we call outflank. So they have to come in within 6 inches of board edge, but 9 inches away from the enemy, which is okay, but they're a very fast unit anyway. So I don't know why you're not just going to put them on the board and yeet them forward as is. So outflanking feels a bit odd. Then we go talk about the artifacts. You've got the Kastelai hero. Once per battle round at the end of the battle shock phase, you can return 1 slain model to each friendly Kastelai summonable unit, wholly within 18 inches of the bearer. This is interesting. I like the idea of this. Like you just res up a couple of models every time. Keys in really nicely with the other healing we've seen previously, but overall, not as good as the next thing, which is subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by the enemy units within 3 inches of the bearer. So if you can build a very survivable general who ends up in combat or near combat a lot of the time, -1 to wound rolls for attacks made by units, not models. If they're within 3, so those units are -1 to wound, that's an incredible debuff. It is difficult to do because you're going to have to be close to the enemy, but it's a great debuff. Very, very good. And then you've got the Red Casket. Add 3 to run and charge rolls for the bearer. Now, this is actually very good, in my personal opinion, because it means you can make a much more fighty unit that's faster and has a larger threat range, right? So does the Grave Sand Shard work for return 1 slain model to each friendly Kastelai summonable unit wholly within 18 inches of the bearer? No, you can't return a slain hero because that unit wouldn't be on the board for you to summon it. So there you go. There's a nice answer for you. I like the +3 to run and charge rolls. I like the -1 to wound. I think the -1 to wound is probably the strongest of the lot because you've got high armor save on a lot of those Blood Knights and also your Vampire and Zombie Dragon. So making them more survivable feels very, very effective. So I love that. So the Avengorii Dynasty is the monster subfaction. Once per turn at the start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 friendly Avengorii monster within 3 inches of an enemy unit until the end of that phase. Use the top row on that unit's damage table. Monsters and larger models generally tend to have what we call a damage table. It's a degrading table, so they effectively get worse. This battle trait is very much like Oakenbrow that you will see from Sylvaneth, but Oakenbrow applies to all of the monsters and you don't need to be in combat. And so it's just not very good. If you look at something like Boulderhead for ogres, they also get +2 wounds as well, which is really nice. So this is just not good and is situational and applies to 1 monster, which is weird because if you do play Avengorii, then you're allowed to have, as battle line, you're able to have Terrorgeists and also whatever the other thing that isn't a Terrorgeist is. I've somehow forgotten it. Whatever, the other thing. So those get to become your battle line. So you're like, okay, but I can only really help 1 monster out, and if it's in combat. So it's not that good a battle trait. Taking me a long time to say that, but it's just not a good battle trait. Hopefully you trust me enough at this point in our viewer-streamer relationship that you know that I'm telling you the truth. Right, then you got Titans of the Grave. So these are monstrous rampages or monstrous actions that you get to make at the start of the combat phase for different monsters. So you've got Maddening Hunger. You pick up to D3 different models within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice. The roll is greater than that model's wound characteristic, it's slain. If you are trying to play Avengorii, I encourage you to not do it. But if you do, then what's really good about this is you get to pick out characters out of a unit.
How you do the voodoo that you do so well. It's a spell. Spell makes me want to soup, shoop, ba doop soup, ba doop soup, ba doop, ba doop, ba doop soup, ba doop soup, ba doop soup, ba doop, ba doop, ba doop.
So I apologize for that. That's when people donate money on Twitch. Thank you to Guy. They get to do voice notes, and thank you to Guy for doing that. So I think what I was trying to say is if you are going to pick D3 different enemy models within 1 inch of this unit, then you are 100% going to want to pick out the unit champion or like the banner bearer. You want to pick out the command units. And the reason you want to do that is because it stops them doing things like all-out defense. So that's a very clever thing to do. And then you've got Unstoppable Nightmare, which is until the end of the following combat phase. The first time a different friendly Avengorii unit within 6 inches unit is destroyed, this unit can fight immediately after the last slain model of the unit is destroyed, is removed from play. So if you happen to have one of these monsters near one of your other units and your other unit is killed, this unit immediately gets to fight. It's like relies on your opponent, your unit dying. So I'm going to say this is bad. I'm just going to say it's bad. That's what I'm going to say. So I don't particularly like that. But the one thing I would say though, we'll talk about when we talk about the command traits. So command traits. So these are for Avengorii generals. So this is for your general. So subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons that target friendly Avengorii monsters wholly within 12 inches. I would say that putting this on something like a Terrorgeist, having Terrorgeist around and trying to make this so it works on them is bad. What you really want is a bunch of characters. So a Vampire Lord, Zombie Dragon, maybe Lauka Vi, maybe a Vengorian Lord, and all of those characters are now in a little bubble, and then they're like a big hammer pack. You tend to sometimes see Ogre players, what they do, they'll have a Frostlord and Stonehorn and some Stonehorn Beast Riders, and they just stack them together, literally jam them together like a little blob. If you charge one, you have to charge them all. What's good about this command trait is you could do that. You could stack them all together and then they'd all be -1 to wound, which is a really significant buff or debuff to the enemy, which is actually very, very good. So I really like that. Then you've got Torment-driven throws. At the start of the combat phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of this general. On a 5+, that unit suffers a mortal wound and the strike last effect applies. This is kind of okay because you do want strike last, but unfortunately it's a 5+, so you're never going to take it. And then you've got the final one, Unhinged Rampager. You can reroll charge rolls for this general. In addition, at the end of the shooting phase, any wounds or mortal wounds are allocated to this general in that phase, and this general is more than 9 inches from enemy units, you get to move d6 inches. This is just bad because effectively it's if you get shot, bad news. You get to move d6 inches away, kind of okay. If they're not within 9 inches, bad news. So I'm going for no on that. So Monstrous Might is a good one, especially if you build like a hero hammer list. And legitimately, a hero hammer list could be quite fun. Then you got some artifacts of power. You got Breath of the Voidmaw, which is once per battle. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy within 6 inches. On a 2+, you take some mortal wounds, up to 6 mortal wounds. This is rubbish. It's once per battle. It's rubbish. Don't do that. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can say the bearer will don Gorfar's collar. If you do so, the strike first effect applies to the bearer until the end of that phase. It's kind of okay. Strike first is very situational and useful, but it's once per battle. And so it doesn't scale particularly well, but this might work in a very concentrated alpha strike list. So again, a bunch of characters that all strike at the same time. But this is nowhere near as good as being able to take a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon that turns off ward saves from their opponent with a heroic action. So it just isn't as good internally inside the book, and you're never going to play Avengorii. And then finally, you got the Furious Crown. Once per battle, at the start of your charge phase, you can say the bearer will unleash the Fury of the Crown. If you do so after the bearer makes a charge move in that phase, pick one enemy within an inch, and then roll a dice, and for each 4+, they suffer a mortal wound. This is what we call an ogre charge. If you roll 10 dice, if you roll a 10-inch charge, roll 10 dice, every 4 up, they'll take a mortal wound for each one. Again, not very good. It's once per battle. But ogres, it's every time. In fact, actually, the Avengorii really just needs to look at the ogre book and say, why can't I make an army as good as the ogre monsters? And then the ogre book needs to look at this and say, how do I make the infantry much better in the ogre book? Because the ogre infantry is terrible. So it would be good if they got lessons from each other. So those are the sub-factions. And now let's move on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the spell laws. So if you've got a wizard, each wizard can choose one of these spells. And the spells are honestly legit. They're genuinely very good. So the Law of Vampires can be cast by, unsurprisingly, vampires. And it's got 3, in my opinion, great spells. The first one is called Soul Spike, but ergo ogre, it's a reverse ogre charge spell. So what it is you pick a unit within 24 inches, and what happens is when they roll a charge, so let's say they roll a 10, for every 4+, they take a mortal wound. So it's like they've reversed an ogre and then they put an ogre inside of the unit. But if you cast a spell on a 9, you get double reverse ogre because you get to pick 2 different enemy units within 24 inches. It's not wholly within, which is great. It's quite a long range, which is great. Yeah, and you're just making them hurt themselves on the way in, which is always funny. Great spell, Soul Spike. I really like it. Bar Transference is a pretty good one. You pick an enemy unit within 9 inches, and then you take their wounds characteristic. You roll that many dice, any 5-ups, and they take a mortal wound, and then the caster will heal that many wounds, right? That's also fantastic, in my opinion. Really good, especially if you obviously take that on your fighty Vampire Lord or something. If you cast it on a 9, then the mortal wounds are done on a 4 instead of a 5. So these are unmodified dice. So if you've got +1 to cast or +2 to cast, none of that is going to work. I've had a question in the chat. Number of dice equal to the charge rolls. Could it be 12 dice? It could be. In fact, actually, talking about the latest Slanesh book, or if you talking about Kragnos in Destruction, it could be up to 18 dice because some people are rolling 3d6 charges nowadays, right? So yeah, it could be very, very scary, but in the right situation. I like Var Transference a lot. If you have a big multi-wound character, keeps them alive, which I think is really good. Then you got Spirit Gale, which is cast on 7, and this one is great. Yeah, if successfully cast, pick each enemy unit on the battlefield suffers a mortal wound. If the unmodified casting roll for this spell is a 9, then each unit suffers 2 mortal wounds. 2 mortal wounds is crazy for every unit on the board, especially if you double it up with the artifact we saw earlier where a caster successfully casts a spell takes D3 mortal wounds. You legitimately are threatening a bunch of characters at range. I think this is very, very good. Spirit Gale. Sure, it's an unmodified 9 to get this off reliably. Maybe you put Chronomantic Cogs in, but ultimately very, very strong. Like, very, very scary. And then you've got Law of the Death Mages. So 3 great spells, yeah? If they charge you, they take mortal wounds. Heal up one of your really important big monster characters with Var Transference. Spirit Gale, board-wide mortal wound damage, which isn't overly engaging as a spell. I really wish stuff like that wasn't written into the game. But if you're excited about playing Soulblight Gravelords, it's a great spell to have in the game. Then you've got Law of the Death Mages. It's for Mortarchs and Death Mage Wizards. You've got Fading Vigor, which reduces the attack characteristic for melee weapons of an enemy unit within 18 inches when you cast it on a 6. If you're on a 9 or more, then it's going to reduce it by 2, which is devastating. You're a great melee army, and then being able to shut down their melee power is very important. This is particularly good, as I've said previously, because Be'lakor is the best unit in the game right now. There are lots of like Death Star units, so having the capacity to shut down the power of one of those Death Star units by reducing how many attacks they have by 2 is very, very good. So I really like Fading Vigor. It's got a good range as well. It's 18 inches. And you've got Prison of Grief, which is cast on a 6 and a range of 12 inches. Until the next hero phase, the unit you choose strikes last. The unmodified roll is a 9. You get to pick a unit in 24 inches. Strike last is also very good in a combat-orientated army. So another really good spell. Like, you can go Law of the Death Mages and really shut down your opponent's ability to affect you, which I think is important. And finally, you got Waste Away, which is cast on a 6 and a range of 18. If successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. To your next hero phase, subtract 1 from the wound rolls to attacks made by melee weapons by that unit, and subtract 1 from the damage characteristic, which is great. And then finally, if you cast it on a 9, you get to do it on 2 different units. So we can have one Death Star unit that's got -2 to its attack profile and is -1 damage and is -1 to wound, which is the best debuff you can get in my personal opinion. You could also make it so that it strikes last. Very, very good spell lore. Like, all 6 spells have definitely got a situation for them. Probably the worst one, weirdly, is the reverse double ogre inside of itself. But all of the spells are great for shutting units down. I would say Prison of Grief, which is strike last, is a little bit shorter range than maybe you would want. But ultimately, you're going to have a wizard near your front lines because they're going to be buffing them in some way. So having them nearby. This is just, in my opinion, all around an incredibly powerful set of spells. and very effective, and I'd be very happy if I was playing Soulblight Gravelords to have these spells. So yeah, great spells. Okay, so we're looking at the War Scrolls, and actually this is really interesting because we start off with Nagash. Nagash can be taken in Soulblight Gravelords and also in OCR Bone Reapers as well as Flesh Eater Cores. So Nagash is kind of like an interesting unit because he's a god character, so he's the god of death. 965 points for Nagash, and kind of to top off the review, that's definitely too expensive. There are loads of melee and shooting units in the game that will delete Nagash probably in a turn, maybe two, but definitely several units that could do it in one. The real question is, have you got enough board presence to protect Nagash so he can do all the things that he does, and can he really bring 965 points of value? That's the question, and I think a lot of competitive players will probably say no, but he definitely has room to be a fun and engaging piece. And don't forget, whenever I'm talking about this stuff, I'm talking about the very top end of a 10% of a meta. If it's just you and your mates at home, absolutely feel free to play Nagash. He is not rubbish, as the internet may say, because you aren't playing at that level, so it doesn't really matter. Just have some fun. So he's 18 wounds with 3-up save and moves 10 inches and can cast 8 spells as a wizard, which is pretty nuts. But we'll talk about that in a minute. He's got 3 close combat attacks, Alakanash, which has got 4 attacks that damage D6, Zeph Nabar, which is 4 attacks that damage D3. And these are legitimately good combat profiles. Ren 2 damage 3, Ren 3 D6 are great profiles, especially because you can get +1 to hit, especially because you can get +1 to wound. So therefore it's 2s. Great rend, lots of damage going through. He doesn't have a fight twice though, and he does have a 5-up ward save. We'll talk about that in a minute. So overall, he's kind of like a Stonehorn. So Frostlord and Stonehorn, only Frostlord and Stonehorn does more damage, and has only got like 2 wounds less. This guy's got 18 wounds. That's kind of what you're thinking about. But Nagash costs twice as much. So Frostlord and Stonehorn does more damage in combat, but is half the points. So that's the thing to talk about. However, you then get an 8 cast wizard, and whichever army you put him in, so when you put him in Soulblight Gravelords, he's going to know all the spells from those spell laws. And as we talked about, those spells are very good. Being able to make it so a unit's -1 to wound, -1 attacks, doing global AoE mortal wounds is pretty interesting. Like, I think that's really good. And he's got definitely some utility to do all of his spells. Cast 8 spells with a natural +3 to cast, which, even when he gets wounded, goes down to a minimum of 4 spells, but he always keeps that +3 to cast now, which is really nice. He also gets that +3 to unbinding and dispelling, and he gets to make an infinite amount of unbind attempts, which is also very, very cool. So, like, he can definitely try to shut down a lot of magic. He's a War Master in an army, which means he can do command abilities from 18 inches. He can fly, +3 to cast, has got a 5-up ward save from Morricane, and other friendly death units have a 5-up ward save wholly within 12 inches. And this is, again, legitimately cool. You could definitely do like a Smash Bros style list, in my personal opinion, where you have another bunch of big hero characters that all get a 5-up ward save thanks to him, or just flood in with other bodies so they all get a 5-up ward save. I know from a 6 to a 5-up doesn't seem like a lot, but it genuinely will be a lot. And I think that's really good. Then he's got the Invocation of Gash, and this is very much like OCR Bone Reapers. You can effectively heal 3 wounds to a bunch of units to a unit. Yeah, a start hero phase for each friendly summonable or OCR Bone Reaper unit wholly within range, which starts at 24 inches. You can heal up to 3 wounds. So healing up to 3 wounds is great for every one of those units, or you can return slain models with a wounds characteristic of up to 3, which is good. And that invocation is obviously going to stack really nicely with the Soulblight Gravelord's ability. So then you can got a lot of retention. You can keep a lot of units and keep healing a lot of units, which is really good. Then you've got Supreme Lord of the Undead. This lets you return a slain, summonable Mordant or OCR Bone Reaper unit, but not a hero, on a 3+ and replace them with up to half of the models. So he effectively brings the allegiance ability with him in an aura around himself, and it's on a 3+ all the time versus a 4+. But it's only at the start of your hero phase. That's kind of good. I think that's really good. Obviously, you can combine this with the allegiance abilities. That's just a lot of returning models. This one's a little bit more difficult because you have to be outside of 9 inches of the enemy. However, in Soulblight Gravelords, the units you return only have to be outside of 3 inches of the enemy. So you're in a good spot there. Then you've got the 9 books in Nagash. and that's how many spells he can cast based on how many wounds he's taken. And then you've got 2 spells. Hand of Dust is kind of like a bit of a famous spell now. It's a spell that effectively means that you can auto-slay models. Some models have rules saying that they can't be auto-slain, but the Hand of Dust auto-slays many other models. It's cast on an 8. It's only got a range of 3 inches, but obviously you can cast it through a spell portal, which is really good. And so, yeah, this has been a devastating spell for many people for many years. And finally, you've got Soul Stealer. And I think maybe that's a huge portion of his points cost is the Hand of Dust ability. He does have the ability to just one bang off several hundred points worth of models in very quick succession, which is very good. And then you've got Soul Stealer, which is cast on 7 and a range of 24 inches. Successfully cast pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If you roll 9 or more, it's going to be D6 mortal wounds, and you get to heal up to that many wounds, which is actually quite nice because this, along with something like Vile Transference, means that Nagash could definitely be kept up at that 18 wound bracket all of the time in between hero phases. Age of Sigmar obviously isn't you go, I go, though, so over a double turn, you definitely could take enough damage that this guy could just die in a pop. So that's everything Nagash does, 965 points. I think this is always a point of contention. Archeon, Nagash, Alariel, never Morathi. Morathi's worth it. Not Teclis. Teclis is worth it. So what is it Nagash doesn't do that Teclis definitely does and Morathi definitely does? That they always get included in the list, almost always see Teclis in the list, almost always see Morathi. Well, Morathi's unique ability is that never dies. So that's kind of her USP. Well, she can't die within like 2 turns because she can only take 3 wounds per turn. And for Teclis, it's the output plus the defense. Teclis is one of the output, like the big damage dealers inside the Lumineth Realm Lord's army, but also in addition, he effectively brings a 5-up ward save around him with one of his spells, which is so key and pivotal. Is also Be'lakor with one of the spells as well. So you have Nurgle Allegiance ability, you have AoE mortal wound damage, which is phenomenal, and you also have the ability to like increase CP and other stuff for an army. So Teclis does everything. Morathi doesn't really die. Also, her economies of scale is massive as well because she makes a unit shoot twice. The problem with Nagash is that you don't have an economies of scale here. Like, you've got a 5-up ward for everyone around you, but you do need to be a little bit broad to go capture objectives. You can return models, but that's redundant because you can already return models in this army. So if Nagash had an ability where you could like pile in and attack twice with a unit, like if they're within range or something, that would be a little bit more effective. Also, Nagash is more expensive than any of those models as well. Do I think Nagash is rubbish? No. I think Nagash is fine and playable. Do I think Nagash is good? No. Not at the very top end of the meta. But like I say, when I talk about those things, that top end of the meta really doesn't impact you because it's like very finite. And Soulblight Gravelords, as a book, has got the perfect counter to Nagash inside of it, which is the Amulet of Screams, which is just going to do tons of mortal wounds to Nagash every time he tries to ramp up those spells. An interesting piece, Nagash. Very interesting. I'd love to know what you all think, and thanks for listening. Okay, on to the villain himself. The greatest combination between Mannfred von Carstein, the Mortarch of Night. Now, if you are playing in Legion of Night, you can take Mannfred. You can obviously take him in other armies as well, but he's able to use some of the abilities in it. So Mannfred von Carstein has got a pretty decent damage profile. I wouldn't say it was massively impressive, specifically because he's only got Rend 2 on most of his weapons, and since the introduction of Age of Sigmar 3, we've seen at least 2 very competent ways of getting +1 save regularly on units in Mystic Shield and All Out Defense. Of course, he's a monster, so he can roar an enemy unit to make it so they can't get All Out Defense. But I just think it would be a little bit more punchy, a little bit more scary if he had Damage 3 or Rend 3. That said, though, he's definitely a good fighter. No qualms there. I think he's definitely good. But I don't think he'll necessarily wipe out units on the charge, which feels weird. He's got 14 wounds with a 3-up armor save, and he initially moves 16 inches. Now, that is fantastic. Mobile and aggressive, can get straight in the fight. He casts 2 spells and unbinds 2 spells. Is a War Master, so he can give a buff around. Command ability is out at 18 inches, which is great. He can fly, which is also really good because he could charge over or move over screens. He's able to ignore the first wound or mortal wound caused to this unit in each phase, which is really nice, which is really going to help with survivability. on top of the Allegiance abilities to do healing, and on top of the Hunger, which is each time this unit fights, after all of the attacks have been resolved, you can heal up to a number of wounds or mortal wounds caused by this unit up to a maximum of 6. So really, from a hero phase heal of 3, oh no, that's only on summonable units. No, you can definitely just heal 6 is the point. That's the really important part, like in each combat phase, and that's significant, right? Then he's got Sword of Unholy Power, which if he slays any models, then he gives buffs out to Legion of Night summonable units. He adds +1 attacks, the characteristic or weapons characteristic of melee weapons for units wholly within 12 inches. This used to be different. It used to be a little bit more, it used to be +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So I'm not 100% certain on this. This has always been a really difficult one to organize. But like he's fast. He's kind of in an odd spot where he's fairly fast. He's going to run off. But +1 attacks is very good. It's one of the better stats because you've just got more attacks. Really nice. Mortarch of Night, he's got the strike first effect when he makes a charge. In addition, if this unit receives a redeploy command, it can attempt to charge instead of making a d6-inch move. Now that's actually pretty important because you move within 9 inches, so this is before your charge phase. He then can get issued the redeploy command ability and can charge. And because he charged, he's got the strike first effect. So he's got that ability to really punch into enemy units a lot more regularly and also more effectively because the enemy unit isn't going to get to fight first. Mannfred's going to get to fight first. It's just when he gets there, he's not going to necessarily deal with some of the scarier units in the game. But he's only 390 points. So 390 points is like quite nice. Maybe I think like players from Soulblight Gravelords wouldn't have minded it being a few more points, but just have slightly more output because he has some really good utility, especially as in Legion of Night. Don't forget, with the heroic action, you're going to be able to then use the heroic action and teleport away as long as you're outside of 3 inches. So I quite like that idea. That's a really fun combo. A unit moves within 9 inches, you redeploy, but you don't redeploy, instead you charge, always strikes first, wipe that unit out. They get the double turn and they're like, this is the turn. You then teleport away again using that heroic action in their turn. They then move another unit nearby. You then charge them again and fight them. That's pretty fun. That's pretty fun. Like legitimately pretty fun. It's just his damage output that for me makes him suboptimal. Doesn't make him bad, just doesn't make him maybe as optimal as, let's say, a Vlos. But really great. Finally, he's got a really great spell, which is cast on 7 and a range of 18 inches. And then it does D3 mortal wounds to a unit, and then everyone else within 6 inches takes another D3 mortal wounds on a 3+, which is really, really great. So overall, I really like Mannfred. I'm going to give him like an 8 out of 10, especially in his own faction, because you're going to be able to do all of those combos. Ultimately, I think maybe he gets a little bit overshadowed by the output of other units, but definitely I think you'll see him on the tabletop and he'll be really good. Okay, next up, 390 points is Neferata, the Mortarch of Blood. And she definitely is inside the best sub-faction, the Legion of Blood. She's 14 wounds with 3 up armor save, which is pretty nice, but doesn't have a ward save, so fairly fragile to a bunch of long-range mortal wounds. Can fly, is a War Master, and is a 2-cast wizard, which is pretty good. Her mount itself is the same as the other Mortarch mount, 6 attacks with the Spectral Claws. Is it? No, the Skeletal Claws. Force 3's Ren 2, damage 2, so it's okay. Like, she potentially could do a lot of damage. Now, she does have the Dagger of Jet, which is pretty nice. At the end of any phase, if any wounds were caused by Amek Ha, which has got 5 attacks at Ren 2, to a hero, then on a 5+, that hero is slain with very few restrictions on this. So some monstrous heroes could definitely be killed by Neferata, which is pretty cool. She's got Twilight of Allure, which is -1 to hit rolls for attacks that made in melee that target Legion of Blood units wholly within 12 inches, which is legitimate in my opinion. -1 to hit is good. That's nice. Obviously not as good as Nagash's 5 at ward save, but -1 to hit is fine. She's got Mortarch of Blood, which is at the end of deployment. Now, this is going to get super tacky, so we can talk about this for a minute. At the end of deployment, before determining control of objectives. So what happens is while you deploy, when you deploy onto a unit, then you control objectives. That only happens after deployment is finished for both players, right? But before that happens, you can pick up to 3 friendly Legion of Blood units and first remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again wholly within your territory. Then remove those friendly Legion of Blood units from the battlefield and set them up again wholly within your territory. Now, I know what you're asking. Okay, what's the situation here? Yeah, what's the situation? That doesn't sound like much. And I'll try to explain it to you really quickly. Okay, so I need a couple of different battle plans to showcase this, and you're going to need to look at the screen. If you listen to the podcast, then I'll try and make some references for you and try and explain it as best as possible. But if we take, the lurkers below, you can see that there's a territory on the far right. There's a no man's land where there's no territory. So in this situation, if you're playing blue or if you're playing the territory on the far right, then what happens is you can take those models off the board and only redeploy them into that territory. However, when you have battle plans where the territory is touching, like, for example, in the presence of idols, there is normally a restriction. You can't deploy units within 9 inches of the opponent's territory, for example. So you would always be 9 inches away. With that redeploy Legion of Blood ability from Neferata, that removes that restriction, because that's only a restriction when you deploy, not a restriction on her ability to do that. So you can deploy much closer. Okay? Will that be FAQ'd? I'm not really sure. If I'm 100% honest, I'm not sure if that'll be FAQ'd. But it does mean, for a moment, Legion of Blood, which is, in my opinion, the better Legion so far, has got this other incredible ability to redeploy units very close to the enemy, which is really good if you're looking to alpha strike with combat, like, let's say, with something like Graveguard or something, which is traditionally quite slow. So that's pretty good. Thanks, Toxie, for resubscribing, and I hope you're well. So that's her Mortarch of Blood ability. 3 units and Neferata, do a deep strike, do a redeploy. Also means that you could be closer to the enemy to potentially do some spells, which is also quite interesting as well. As she's a wizard, and it's done before spellcasting even happens, which is done in the hero phase. So some nice little tech there, like legitimately, that's really exciting. Whether or not it survives the FAQ, that's the real point. She has the hunger, because she's a vampire, so she can heal up to 6 wounds if damage is done in combat, which is pretty good. And then she's got a spell, and this is probably the other reason for taking her. So she has double value called Dark Mist. It's cast on a 6, and it's got a range of 12 inches. Don't forget also, if you're playing Neferata in Legion of Blood, she's going to naturally get +1 to cast when not in combat. If successfully cast, you pick one friendly Legion of Blood unit, wholly within range visible to the caster, ignore negative modifiers. This is the trick. So either do it on Neferata herself, so she's more survivable. Probably the trick is to take a Legion of Blood Knights, or a unit of Blood Knights, and then they'll have a 3-up armor save, give them a Mystic Shield and also Dark Mist. This means they'll be on a 2-up unrendable armor save, which is pretty nice. Especially if you then are deploying them right next to your opponent, and then you're moving in the movement phase within 3, and then yeeting them in and doing what we call an alpha pin, which is pretty dominant. So overall, Neferata herself makes it so that you can make units very unkillable and then get those units much closer. So this is just astounding in loads of ways. 290 points feels very good. Obviously not as much output as Mannfred, but I think a lot more utility than Mannfred, and is a lot more scalable than Mannfred, which is really important, because a lot of hero characters and support characters are about scalability versus versus just being like pure damage. The best example probably of pure damage characters would be a Frostlord and Stonehorn. It's probably like the best one. Even someone like Kragnos has scalability because he lets everyone within range charge on 3d6, which obviously ties really nicely with things like Tyrants. So Neferata brings double utility and double scalability to the army. Really good. And has the ability to also kill characters on a 5, which is pretty nuts. So yeah, really like Neferata. Sub-faction. So that's one of his keywords. 16 wounds with 3-up armor save is nice and chunky. Very survivable. Don't forget, very much like Neferata, 6-up ward save, because obviously being in Soulblight Gravelords. It's got a very weird, powerful Pestilent Breath, which is 12-inch range, D6 attacks, but is Rend 1 damage 3, which is really, really odd. Meaning you could do up to 18 damage with the, to quote Kenny in the chat, the halitosis of Sigmar, which is odd. Now, he's got a Blood Lance, which is 5 attacks, 3 threes, Rend 2, damage 3. However, on the charge, that goes up to Rend 3, damage 3. Don't forget, if you do play them in Kastelai, there's the ability to potentially add +1 damage onto that as well in Kastelai if you kill like a hero or a monster. So that could be 5 attacks, 3 threes, Rend 3, damage 4. Then you got the Stapid Moors. He's a combat character. You can run the math yourself, but he's a combat character. Also a 1-cast wizard with the spell Quick Blood, which is cast on a 7. And if successfully cast, then the caster, so Vhordrai himself, gets Always Strikes First. And Always Strikes First is really good for a combat character. That works really nicely. And it's until your next hero phase. So even if your opponent charges you, then you get to strike first. So that feels very, very good. He's got the hunger, so he can heal up to 6 wounds in combat from units that he's models that he's slain, which is also very good, meaning that 16 wounds can get buffed up continuously, which is genuinely very good. So I like that a lot. And then you've got this new ability. He's also a War Master, so you can do command abilities from 18 inches. But he's got this ability called the Fist of Nagash, which is once per turn when a Kastelai vampire unit gains bonuses. If you remember and go back and re-remember or go watch what happens with Kastelai again. But when a Kastelai unit kills a certain other type of unit, you can either get +1 damage, +1 attack, or +1 move. When that happens, then you're able to give that buff to another unit, and don't forget that buff lasts for the rest of the battle, to another vampire unit that's wholly within 24 inches. And there's also a command trait where you can do the same thing, and the general can also gain that. So one unit can go out, get the buff that you need, and Vhordrai can either keep it for himself or give it to someone else, and your general can also keep it. So that singular hero you kill, let's say, can give +1 damage to multiple units, which I think is, in my opinion, very, very good. He can also get +1 to wound from the monstrous rampage, as Rob has said, which is definitely going to significantly increase his output. So very, very good. So do I think he's phenomenal? Well, he's 470 points. He's also got the terror ability. Enemy units cannot receive Inspiring Presence command while they're within 3 inches of any unit with this ability. 470 points is a lot of points. I guess I compare him to a Stonehorn in many ways, because he doesn't necessarily buff any units around him, except for the Fist of Nagash ability.
Joke interlude. I ordered a chicken and an egg online. I'll let you know. I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey. It took a while, but I turned myself around. Why do sharks swim in salt water? Because water makes them sneeze.
Thank you to Ziggy for donating £10. If you are watching this on YouTube, the Twitch chat have the ability to donate money while I'm recording videos. And now it's their favorite thing to do. So I was somewhere about describing the terror rule, which enemy units cannot receive Inspiring Presence command while they're within 3 inches of any friendly units with this ability. So that's really useful. In my personal opinion, that's really, really effective and is really good. Because, yeah, anyway. So, like, he's an interesting piece. 470 points, combat piece, useful in Kastelai. Do I think he's the most efficient? No. Do I think he's very good if you work him in combo in Kastelai? Yes. Do I think Kastelai is the best sub-faction? No. Do I think he's probably going to be outshone by Legion of Blood, Vampire Lord, Zombie Dragon? Yes. But there's still a combo there and more survivable now, thanks to the ward save, thanks to the additional wounds, thanks to the Always Strikes First. So I really like Vhordrai. I think he's a good piece. The Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, we're talking about it a lot already. The generic monster hero means you can give it a command trait and an artifact. 16 wounds with a 3-up armor save and is 440 points. Moves 14 inches and is a great melee combatant. You've got 2 different weapons you can choose from, the Death Lance or the Vampiric Sword. Before you buy your first one, you've got to ask yourself, are you going to be charging around a lot, in which case you need the Death Lance, or are you going to be stuck in combat a lot, in which case you need the Vampiric Sword? In my personal opinion, you should definitely go for the Death Lance. The Death Lance has got 3 attacks, but if you are playing them in Legion of Blood, which I encourage you to do, then you can have 4 attacks. You hit on 3s, you wound on 3s, you Rend 2, damage 2, unless you've charged, in which case it goes from Rend 3 to Rend 3 and damage 3. The Snapping Maws have got 3 attacks, 4s, 3s, Rend 3, damage 3. So hit on 4s is pretty yikes. And then the Sword-like Claws, of which you've got 7 attacks, 4s and 3s, Rend 1, damage 2. We're going to talk about those damage profiles again in a moment in Legion of Blood. It's worth talking about. He's a wizard, or they're a wizard, sorry. The unit can fly, and they've got the hunger, so they can heal up to 6 wounds in each combat phase. Got the Death Lance charge, which is obviously you get +1. You get Rend 3, damage 3 on the charge. Then you've got Terror, so enemy units cannot receive Inspiring Presence while they're within 3 inches, and that's great. Terror is legitimately very good because it means a whole bunch of units will run away from Battle Shock. I love that. I think it's good. And then you've got the Curse of Exsanguinations, which is effectively you pick a unit within 18 inches and it's cast on a 7. You do the mortal wound, then you roll a 3 up, you do another mortal wound, and 3 up and another mortal wound. If ever you kill a model, so for instance, if you do this to 1 wound model unit, the first model you kill, it ends. But if you do it to more units, a unit with multiple wounds, then you just keep rolling that 3 up, doing as many mortal wounds until you've slain a model, which is pretty rad. Like, it's pretty funny, like really fun, super engaging. Just keep rolling the 3 up. Your opponent's like, no, stop it, and roll. Now, don't forget also, the Vampire Zombie Dragon will also get a 5-up ward save. 6-up ward save, because obviously in Soulblight Gravelords. Now, the real trick here, in my personal opinion, is you take this in Legion of Blood. And why would that be so good? Well, number one, you got the monstrous action to ignore ward saves. There's lots of units in the game where ward saves are their way of surviving, and the Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon is going to be able to negate that with a heroic action, which your opponent can't stop and just has to watch happen as it comes charging towards you. Also, you got the ability to take the command trait in Legion of Blood, where everything hits on 2s in an aura around you, up to D3 units. And that's going to be very effective. Like I said, when I talked about that command trait, there's a real good conversation about whether or not that affects the mount, but I personally think it does affect the mount. And that really changes up the math on the attacks here. Also, just ignoring the ward save, heroic action will also apply to the Pestilent Breath shooting attack, which is D6 shots, and don't forget, you need to generate the amount of attacks. So you roll the D6. If you roll a 1, probably don't use all-out attack. But if you roll a 6, probably use all-out attack, because then it's going to go from 3s to 2s. Okay? Now, the important part in Legion of Blood is you can get +1 attack on everything, but if you do use the Deathless Minions ability, or whatever it's called, the command trait, then all of these attacks are now going to hit on 2s. So you're going to have 4 attacks hitting on 2s, wound on a 3, rend 3, damage 3. You're going to have 4 attacks with the snapping maw hitting on 2s, where previously they were hitting on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 3, damage 3. And then 8 attacks with the sword-like jaws, which normally would hit on 4s, but now hitting on 2s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. So the damage on this goes up significantly. My friend Rob in the chat has done a little damage profile for everyone here. The Legion of Blood Velos with Doomed Minions, which is the command trait, does significantly more damage than Neferata and Prince Vhordrai. So there's something to be said there. So a real smash piece that you can potentially put in your army for 440 points feels like a really good purchase, feels like something that's going to do really well in the army. So I really like this, especially as that's also the subfaction that's got the Screaming Amulet, which is going to do mortal wounds to the enemy army when they try to cast spells. So big fan of this, really good. Vampire and Zombie Dragon, I think very, very good, especially in the Legion of Blood. Okay, maybe one of the most imaginatively designed miniatures in Age of Sigmar. Lucavi, the Mother of Nightmares, a centaur vampire, is 11 wounds with 3-up armor saves and moves 12 inches. Has got a pretty good melee profile, but I wouldn't say an astounding melee profile, and is 300 points. And has got a couple of abilities. Is a wizard and can cast 1 spell. Is a war master, so can issue commands from 18 inches, and can fly. Now, she's got a couple of abilities. The Queen Amongst Monsters one applies only to Avengorii monsters, so when she's in Avengorii. Once per turn, at the end of the charge phase, you can pick 1 friendly Avengorii monster, wholly within 12 inches of this unit. You can carry 2 monstrous rampages. Obviously, that's going to apply to her. I don't think the Avengorii subfaction is particularly good, but there you go. She can definitely do that inside of that. Then she's got Nightmare's Miasma, which is true for her and the Vengorian Lord, which is while enemy units within 3 inches of any friendly ability worsen the rend characteristic by 1. It's a really nice debuff in conjunction with some of the other debuffs that we've got in this book. And then the 3-up armor saves that you get on these character monsters and also Blood Knights means that you can really reduce how much rend is coming into the high armor save unit, so you can reduce a lot of damage, which I think is really good. Then you've got the Hunger, so you can heal up to 6 wounds in the combat phase. And then she's got a special spell called the Queen's Dictate. The Queen's Dictate is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 24 inches. If successfully cast, pick 1 enemy unit within range, invisible to the caster, until your next hero phase. Avengorii monsters, so again, that subfaction, are eligible to fight in the combat phase if they're within 6 inches of the enemy instead of 3, and they compile in 3 inches. So you basically create a large sphere of influence where these Avengorii monsters compile in. Obviously, she herself is an Avengorii monster. You could take other Avengorii monsters as well. Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is obviously one of those things you could do. So that's quite an interesting little trick that you can do and pile in and affect people. Overall, though, I'm not sure that's necessarily that great. It's kind of interesting book so far. A lot of charges in your opponent's like charge phase, options there, like the ability to go and strike them. But when you get there, you don't do overwhelming damage. You just do some. But you do have the ability to heal quite significantly with things like the hunger, which I think is quite good. Ultimately, I think she's good. 300 points feels expensive, like 250, 270 would be better. And is is quite a nice little like buff piece. But only if you play an Avengorii. So like, yeah, there we go. Very interesting. For 270 points, you can get yourself a Vengorian Lord. The Vengor Lords are coming. It's got 10 wounds on a 3-up armor save, moves 12 inches, and does not bracket, which is good. It's okay in a fight, 4 attacks at damage 2, 3 attacks at damage 3. Legitimately, like, okay, but, like, not wild. Fly, and is a 1-cast wizard. I think maybe the better way of thinking about this is it's a very fighty 1-cast wizard, much more than it is a monster fighter that's also a wizard. Then that you might feel a little bit better about it as a war scroll. They have an ability called Festering Feast, which is a Soulblight Gravelords monster that is not a hero, so can't be a hero, that is wholly within 12 inches unit, that destroyed an enemy unit, can heal all of its wounds. That's legitimately quite interesting if you're going to go for like zombie dragons just running around on their own fighting stuff. But I don't think they're probably going to be survivable enough to make this be effective, but is useful and you can have some fun with it probably. You've got Nightmare Miasma, reducing down the rend of units within 3 inches. The Hunger, which is healing 6 wounds in the combat phase. And you've got Curse Reflection, which is a spell, which lets a non-hero monster, Soulblight Gravelords monster, within 24 inches have the same hunger ability that all of the hero monsters do. And so it can heal up a little bit. So Vengorian Lord's pretty interesting. It feels like a support piece for other monsters, including himself, obviously, which is quite interesting. But doesn't actually benefit other hero monsters, only benefits unridden monsters. And overall, for 270 points, I don't think that's enough for me personally. But yeah, it's an interesting war scroll, but I would like to know what you think. Radukar the Wolf is our next character. So this is for the Vyrkos Dynasty. 6 wounds, 4-up armor save, and is 6 inches. For 130 points. Pretty good. Bravery 10 is nice as well. Is a 1-cast wizard and can unbind a spell. He's got the Hunger, so it can heal wounds in combat, which is quite nice. He's got Call of the Hunt. In the combat phase, if this unit made a charge move in the same turn, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Vyrkos summonable units while they're wholly within 12 inches unit. So this is only going to be Vyrkos units, so that's a bit of a problem. Vyrkos units, sorry. Only Vyrkos summonable units. But +1 attack characteristic is legitimately a good ability, and we absolutely love that. He's also got a very cool ability. By the way, he's just rubbish in a fight. It's like 5 attacks, 3 speeds, rend 1 damage 2. It's like nothing. And he got Loyal to the Last, right? But he's only 130 points, right? And it's if this unit is within 3 inches of a friendly Kosargi Nightguard unit, before you allocate wounds or mortal wounds to this unit, you basically get a 3-up ward save. So you can bodyguard off wounds to the Kosargi Nightguard. Now, you know what you're asking yourself, Rob? Who the heck are the Kosargi Nightguard? Well, they're a unit of 2 ogres, but they're undead ogres. They come as a unit of 2 and they cost 90 points. 4 wounds each with a 4-up armor save and a 5-up ward. Now, if you use the Vyrkos Dynasty as it's currently written, please do check for an FAQ if at time of watching this it's changed. But as it's currently written, you can add D3 Kosargi Nightguard back to that unit. D3 back. You can add, not back to, they don't have to be slain. You can just add D3 and then add another D3. The designer's note specifically says you can do it. But right now you can also add D3 corpse cart. So that's probably something that needs looking at. But if you, even without that one cute trick, which will surprise you, I still think Radukar the Wolf, with a 3-up kind of bodyguard rule, is quite nice for 130 points, especially as he's going to buff units around him, giving them +1 attack, which feels like a nice buff when he's very, very cheap. You've got the ability to globally scale up multiple summonable units around you, thanks to Call to the Hunt, while also being quite survivable. So, yeah, quite nice. Quite nice. Radukar the Beast up next, 290 points. And he's got the big, beefy 12 wounds. Don't forget, 6-up ward save, 4-up armor save. Moves 8 inches and can run and charge. When we're talking about survivability, he's also got supernatural reflexes, so to subtract 1 from hit and wound rolls for attacks that target the model. Okay, not too bad. Not too bad. Run and charge, so he's quite mobile as well. Potential 14 inches of movement and then can charge 2d6. He's also got Call to the Hunt, which is the same as we saw on Radukar the Wolf, which is the ability to add +1 attack characteristic to friendly Vyrkos summonable units while they're wholly within 12 inches of the unit when they made a charge move. He's got the Hunger to Heal, which is nice, up to 6, and with a larger wound cap, can potentially take more damage but still heal it up, which I think is interesting. And then he's got an ability where any 6s to hit with his Bloodslit Claws, of which he gets 6 attacks, does 2 mortal wounds, and then the attacks stop. This is an interesting piece because what he does is he gives out a +1 attack aura to units around him. But other than that, absolutely everything on his war scroll is to do with his survivability. Oh, sorry, one last thing. He's got an ability called the Beast Will Out, which is if he takes any damage in a phase, he can move up to d6 inches as long as this unit is more than 12 inches from all enemy units, which will just never happen because it's a game and you're always close to people. So he's an interesting piece because his war scroll says you can buff units around him with Call to the Hunt, but you could do that with the previous version, and he's a lot cheaper. This is 290 points, the other's 130. Then you say, okay, well, then he's a fighting unit. At 290 points, he's got 12 attacks at damage 2, which is okay. Not terrible. Like, he's legitimately pretty good, but it's not, like, astounding, especially if I can take 20 Graveguard for 280 points. And then that's a lot more attacks at damage 2. So, but he's fast and mobile, but this seems like an army that's going to want to fight around itself. Like, and then when he does run away, the -1 to hit, -1 to wound, 6-up ward save, and maybe even have an ogre bodyguard could make him more survivable. But then what's he being survivable doing? Because it's not killing loads. So that's kind of interesting as well. I think ultimately I maybe would take Radukar the Wolf over Radukar the Beast. Yeah, Sigvald's a good example. Thank you, Joe, in the chat. 210 points and will actually slap a bitch. And this guy maybe will stroke a bitch. And that's fine. But there we go. The new character, Ivya Volga. Again, we're in Vyrkos. Lots of characters in Vyrkos. Lots. 6 wounds, 4-up armor saves, move 6 inches. Now, she's got 2d6 attack in close combat and 5 attacks in close combat that damage 2. The 2d6 are 4s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1, so there's a little bit of nothing. However, if she does have any wounds assigned to her, then it becomes flat 12 attacks, which again is still pretty rubbish. The Hunger is an ability to heal in combat, and then she's got the Behemoth's Bane, which is quite an interesting piece of anti-monster tech. If an enemy monster are within 3 inches of this unit counts as 10 models. So if you're in combat, and for the purpose of contesting an objective, in addition, while an enemy monster is within 3 inches of this unit, the attack characteristics of that monster's melee weapons are 1. So she debuffs enemy monsters so drastically that each one of their melee profiles is only 1. However, with only 6 wounds on a 4-up armor save, even a mighty stomp is going to be close to killing her. So I don't think she's necessarily going to survive. But 3 inches, you could potentially screen her out and drop her in the right place if monsters are prevalent. But monsters are normally much faster than Ivya Volga is going to be. So being able to shut them down, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. 135 points for the opportunity to shut down a monster. It's whether or not you think monsters are enough of an issue. Could be really fun with your friends. Charging her in and making it so they've only got 1 attack is quite fun. And she's -1 to hit from the Shrieking Swarm. So that makes those monsters even less effective. But any other unit catches her out and she probably is going to die. Fun with friends, seal of approval. Next up, the Granny Vampire. Riding a wolf, Belladamma Volga, the first of the Vyrkos. 9 wounds on a 4-up armor save and very fast at movement 10. Now, she isn't necessarily what you would call a combat character with only 4 attacks that are damage 2, so that's not really her job. She does have 2 casts, though. She's a 2-cast wizard and is a war master, so you can issue command abilities from quite far away, 18 inches. She has a +1 to cast, dispelling and unbinding rolls. And if she's within 3 inches of any Vyrkos dire wolves, then she gets to bodyguard wounds that she suffers onto the wolves on a 3-up, which is great. She has the hunger, so she's able to heal up to 6 wounds in combat. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because her attack profile is pretty weak, but she's got a nice beefy 9 wounds to keep healing into. Also, don't forget she has a 6-up ward. But she does have 2 unique spells. One of them, which I think is really important, and especially at the incredibly cheap point of 170 points, I definitely think I would bring her all the time. She's got Under the Killing Moon, which is the one I would take a lot of. And what this does is you pick a unit within 24 inches, a friendly unit, and if you successfully cast the next hero phase, unmodded for hit roll for an attack made by a melee weapon by that unit, but it is only a Vyrkos unit. Holy range of the caster is a 6. The attack scores 2 hits. Oh no, it's an aura. I apologize. It's not a single unit, it's an aura. And it's 24 inches. Holy hell. Holy hell, 24-inch aura, exploding 6s. So you effectively become, this is incredible. It's incredible. And it's only cast on a 6. So because she gets +1 to cast, it's cast on a 5. My God. So everyone in an aura gets exploding 6s on 24 inches, but they have to be Vyrkos units. So a little bit different. And then she has another spell called Lichen Curse, which is cast on 7, a range of 18 inches. You do D3 mortal wounds, and for every wound that you cause, you can set up a unit of dire wolves up to D3 models. If you do 3 mortal wounds, you set up D3 dire wolves basically within range, which is nice, especially if you've then got the heroic action to add D3 mortal units. So you could kind of do that really fun thing where you like generate a unit, then you add more to that unit, and it can become a legitimately scary unit, which is quite fun. I think for 170 points, if you're playing Vyrkos and you're planning to run this sort of build, I think she's a bit of a steal, personally. I think if you're not going to take her in an army of Vyrkos, I think she's maybe not as good, but a 2-cast wizard that's a War Master and can still do Lichen Curse feels pretty decent. So yeah, I'd say all over, fantastic. The next unit is Gorslav the Gravekeeper, 7 wounds and a 6-up save, and now is only in the Vyrkos Dynasty. He's got 2 special abilities. One of them is get a 2-up bodyguard rule, so effectively can pass wounds off from him, but only onto zombie units if he's within 3 inches. And then he's got another ability that once per turn at the end of your movement phase, you can return a slain Vyrkos Dynasty zombie unit, specifically, that has been destroyed, and a new replacement unit with half of them can pop up. So now you've got keyword zombies, yeah, of course. So now what you've got is the ability to use your battle trait to bring back a slain unit, and also Gorslav to bring back a slain unit, like at the same time. So that's pretty interesting because then you can recycle quite a lot of units. So even your opponent killing stuff means you're going to bring units back, which I think is really interesting. He's 120 points, is only really going to be effective if you're taking lots of zombies. But if you are taking lots of zombies, then I'd probably take Gorslav. Okay, the next up is Torgillius the Chamberlain, is 125 points. He's 6 wounds on a 6-up armor save. And he's got like an okay shooting attack, which is pretty crazy. The necrotizing bolts, 2d6 shots, 4s and 4s, rend 1, damage 2. And he's got claws and fangs, which is terrible in a fight. He's a wizard and can cast a spell. But the important part is he's got the Trusted Lieutenant ability, which is friendly Vyrkos summonable units have a ward of 5 up while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Now, don't forget, he's also got an artifact that you can take in the Vyrkos Dynasty, which allows you to add +1 to the Deathless Minions battle trait. So that won't affect this. You can't go from a 5+ to a 4+. But what you can do is you can have 2 different heroes with a 5+ ward bubble, meaning that your units are much more survivable, which is quite interesting. Have Belladamma as well. So then you've got a 24-inch aura bubble of exploding 6s. Feels quite nice. However, doesn't have a bodyguard rule, has only got 6 wounds, and has only got 6-up save. So a little bit fragile, to be honest, but is surrounded by hopefully loads of other units keeping him safe. For 90 points, you can get 3 models of the Vyrkos Blood-born. They're 3 wounds each. That's 9 wounds with a 6-up armor save. So not very survivable at all. Not survivable. However, They've got an okay melee profile, 3 attacks each, 3s, rend 1 damage too. And they're also elite, which means they can issue commands themselves. So that's going to be 9 attacks that are damage 2. So not bad for 90 points. But they've got some other cool features as well. They've got Shadow Fast, which is after deployment before the first turn begins. They get a 10-inch pre-game move. Don't forget that when you make pre-game moves in Age of Sigmar, that means that if you land that pre-game move unit on an objective, you count as having held that objective. So your opponent is going to come and have to take it off you, which is pretty good. I also like the idea that you get that 10-inch move, and then if you take the first turn, another 10-inch move, you're legitimately moving 20 inches and you're threatening the enemy army, which I think is really, really great. And 3 of them could definitely maybe take out a character or put a little bit of hurt on a monster. Then you've got Vampiric Agility, which means they just get to move over units and terrain features the same manner as a unit that can fly. And then they've got the Hunger, so they can heal models in their unit as well. Each time the unit fights, and those attacks allocate, so they can just heal wounds into the unit. So 90 points, very fragile, can't resummon them when they're dead. Not brilliant, but they have some very interesting tech and utility and add some speed into the army in a very unique way. Also, what they do is they create what we call they create zoning, or they zone out the board. So what I effectively mean is, if you imagine a board and you picture that you deploy a whole army on the left-hand side of the board, and then you just put a couple of these units out, then that means anything that wants to deep strike won't be able to land because you've zoned the board with these units quite far out, which is nice because it stops things like KO alpha shooting, or maybe even anything that wants to deep strike and charge you, which is very cool. And also fast enough and cheap enough to eat and unleash hell for your big units is another great shout. I love that idea. Thank you to JP in the chat. So again, just super clear, not like overly brilliant, but they're very cheap and they do something quite utilitarian, which is quite important in the game in a lot of ways. Good skirmish unit, quite likely. For 110 points, you can get the Watch Captain Halgrim. He's got 5 attacks that are damage 2. In fact, most of the characters in this book have got 5 attacks at damage 2, which is quite interesting. They've got 5 wounds and a 4-up armor save, so he's kind of okay. I mean, he's very cheap, he's 110 points. Any 6s to hit with his Cursed Halberd are going to do 2 mortal wounds in addition. But if you are going to bring him along, which I doubt, it's going to be because of the Disciplined Advance rule, which you can choose 3 friendly Vyrkos Death Rattle units, so incredibly specific. Again, you're playing in the Vyrkos Dynasty. If you do so, no command points are spent. The second and third time it's issued. So you can basically do 3 runs, and a run of total of 6 for 3 Vyrkos Death Rattle units. So run 3 units, a maximum of 6, and it only costs you 1 CP. It's fine. It's not great, but I guess it makes your army more mobile, which is kind of okay. For 110 points, you can get the Wolf Yogurt, the Vargskyr. 8 wounds and a 5-up save, and moves 8 inches. He's got 4 attacks and D3 attacks, which are all damage 2 and Rend 1 and Rend 2. And then he's got Bounding Leaps, which means he can charge from 3d6. Charge on 3d6 from 18 inches away. And then he's also got the Hunger, so when he gets into combat, he's going to be able to heal up to 6 wounds. Just don't take him. That's a review. 90 points for 2 models of Kosargi Nightguard, ogres who bodyguard people. It's pretty fun. They've got 4 wounds and a 4-up armor save, and they move 8 inches. They have a ward save of 5+ as well, so they're legitimately not actually bad. But unfortunately, they only have 2 attacks each, 4 attacks in total for the unit. They hit on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. And they do have the ability to add +1 attacks to their weapons if they're within 12 inches of Radukar the Wolf or Radukar the Beast. As we talked about earlier, if it maintains that you can add multiple of these with the Vyrkos heroic action, then this is legitimately a very interesting unit. If not, this is probably an okay unit, and that's about it. 110 points for a phenomenal mini. Lady Annika has got 6 wounds, a 4-up armor save, and a 4-up ward save. She has the Hunger, so she's got the ability to heal wounds every time she fights, which is good. And this unit has the ability to go into Deep Strike and deploy into your opponent's territory, but still has to be 9 inches away, and can do that during during deployment, And then finally, she got the Kiss of the Blade Probzokian. Definitely said that wrong. If any wounds or attacks were caused by this to a hero or monster and that enemy unit was not slain, then you worsen the save characteristic of them by 1. to a minimum of 6 for the rest of the battle. So very, very cheap. Very, very cheap. Very, very cheap. Crazy, crazy cheap. Is it good? No. But, like, is there. So you can take it. Good with friends. Stamp of approval. Good with friends. 120 points for Kritza the Rat Prince. 6 wounds and a 4-up save. He's got the hunger, so anytime he fights, he's going to be able to heal wounds. But which is kind of incongruent with the next rule, which is called Scurrying Retreat, because he's a vampire that is surrounded and powered by rat blood. And so in the combat phase, when you pick this unit to fight, you can say it will make a scurrying retreat. If you do so, that unit retreats instead of fighting. And then, so kind of like, okay, he can heal, but also run away. The main reason you'd maybe take him, though, is the Verminous Court, which is at the start of the combat phase. You can pick one enemy within 1 inch of this unit that has an artifact of power. On a 3+, you basically steal it, or you break it, or you turn it off, or whatever you want to think about it narratively. But for the rest of the battle, they can no longer use that artifact. And if it was like on a weapon or something, it reverts to its normal form. 120 points to steal an artifact is kind of interesting. I'm not going to lie. Especially fun if you want to be like one of them weird narrative dudes who just runs around saying, oh, I'm going to steal your artifact, steal your artifact. Maybe keep a tally of how many Kritza are stolen. He's also summonable. So if he does eventually get slain, you will be able to attempt to rally him back from the dead, which is really cool and quite fun. Would I take him in a list? No. But he's interesting. For 135 points, I know, crazy, 135 points, you can take Cado Ezechiar, the Hollow King. He's 6 wounds with a 3-up armor save and moves 6 inches. He's a 1-cast wizard, but there's an important point to make about this 1-cast wizard. Cado Ezechiar, and if you read his narrative text, says he cannot gain a sub-faction keyword. So he's already in a weird section of the kind of game. He's already in a weird section of the game because he now cannot benefit from any of the other allegiance abilities or sub-faction. So he can benefit from allegiance abilities and battle traits, but not sub-faction battle traits. But he's a 1-cast wizard and is a pretty rubbish fighter. He's got the hunger so he can heal, which is whatever. He's got the Court of the Lost, though, which is an ability, right? At the start of the hero phase, if this unit's on the battlefield, you can say it will summon a spirit from the Court of the Lost. If you do so, pick one of the following abilities. The unit can move 14 inches, and when he gets there, he can do pretty much nothing. You can add one to the casting, unbinding, and dispelling rolls of the unit, which is fine. He's got his own unique spell. And finally, you've got Spirit of the Fallen, which is if an attack made by this unit wounds a target, that attack causes a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of this weapon. And he's damaged 2. So you could do 2 mortal wounds for each attack, right? I don't think he's rubbish with the mortal wound stance. I think that like he's fine for 135 points. But it really does feel, in my personal opinion, like Soulblight Gravelords is an army to do with like economies of scale versus like 135 point melee character. But maybe he's great. And then he's got Retribution and Salvation, which is his spell, which is a spell which is 18 inches, which either does D3 mortal wounds to enemy units, 3 mortal wounds to chaos, or potentially resurrects D3 models into a summonable Gravelords unit, Soulblight Gravelords unit, which is quite interesting. So another way to return D3 mortal wounds to a Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit. Overall, interesting. The chat are big on him. Like, they absolutely love him. They think he's a great little character for darting in, doing some damage and running away, or maybe not even doing that, just kind of like exploding some damage. Quite interesting for the army. So yeah, I'd love to know what you think about Cado. I'm not sure. The Vampire Lord is 130 points, 5 wounds and a 3-up armor save, is a wizard. So you're paying normally like 80, 90 points for a wizard anyway, so you've already got that. He's an okay melee fighter, not good. 5 attacks, 3 threes, rend 1 damage 2. Like, we'll fight something maybe. And then it's got the hunger, so can heal, which is important. But the bit that's really important here is the ability. It's not a command ability and it's not a spell. Once per turn at the start of the combat phase, you can pick a friendly summonable Soulblight Gravelords unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit and add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit's melee weapon until the end of that phase. The same unit cannot benefit from this twice, but you can take multiple Vampire Lords and buff multiple units. This feels like a bit of like a wombo combo that's starting to form in this army. You're getting +1 attack onto a unit. We already know there are other ways to get +1 attack from auras, which is quite nice, whether it be from Mannfred, whether it be from Radukar, which is quite nice. And then we know we can get Explosion 6s from Belladamma. So you could get a lot of attacks that do a lot of damage, which I think is quite interesting. So quite like the Vampire Lord, and it's also a caster, so you're going to be able to cast one of those great spells that we saw earlier. So I think pretty good for 130 points. Great opportunity for someone to carry either a good artifact or carry a good command trait. So shout out on the Vampire Lord, I think. Okay, so we're going to talk about Blood Knights now. Blood Knights are 3 wounds each with a 3-up armor save, and they move 10 inches. They come in a unit of 5, and they're 230 points. So you get 15 wounds on a 3-up armor save, and obviously a 6-up ward save. Okay, they're bravery 10, so they're not really going to run away, and they move 10, which is quite quick or quick enough. You get to reroll 1s for the Deathless Minions battle trait, thanks to the Standard Bearer, and you get to add +1 attack to the champion. This means that you're going to get 16 attacks from the Templar Lance or Templar Blade, which is 3 attacks, 3s, rend 2, damage 1. On the charge, you get to add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit's melee weapons, but it doesn't affect the mount. So in total, you're going to have 16 attacks at rend 2, damage 2, which is quite nice. Obviously, if you take him in the Kastelai, you can add +1 attack to that and also +1 damage. So you could have these guys at 16 attacks, rend 2, but damage 2. Oh, no, sorry. No, 21 attacks at rend 2, damage 3, which is pretty crazy. Oh, yeah, and +1 attack in Legion of Blood as well is another way to get +1 attack. So there are ways to kind of increase how many attacks that you're going to get on this unit. They've also got the Hunger, so if you do have a wounded one of these, you could kill something and then heal some back. Now, the thing that's going to be quite important is the Riders of Ruin ability, which is models in the unit can pass across other models with a wounds characteristic of 3 or less in the same model, same manner as a model that can fly. So don't forget, you've got to finish outside of 3 inches of that unit. After this unit has moved, roll a dice for each enemy unit that has any models it passed across. On a 2+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. Now, they've written the word move instead of a normal move, which is what you do in the movement phase, a charge move, which is what you do in the charge phase, and a piling move, which you do in the piling step, which is exactly what happened with Noblars. So this means a unit of 5 of these can do 3d3 mortal wounds when it moves, charges, and then piles across you, which is pretty impressive. And doing that with multiple units of Blood Knights could be very, very effective. So you could have multiple small units or MSU of Blood Knights and then be able to just keep popping over units and doing lots of mortal wounds. Quite fun. The other trick probably with the Blood Knights is having a big unit of 10 or maybe 15 and then making it so that Neferata casts a spell so you can't affect their armor save negatively, which means you could give them a Mystic Shield and then they have a 2-up armor save which ignores rend, which is pretty devastating, creating what we call an alpha. You can't do 15, so only a 10. Creating what we call an alpha pin list. So reinforce them once and have a unit of 10, move them up, and then pin the rest of the enemy army in, which is quite interesting. Feels like a unit that you want to keep moving, though, which I quite like a lot. But yeah, a very, very interesting unit, very powerful, lots of output, lots of damage. Whether or not we'll see it on the tabletop, I think we will because the armor save's very effective. But other than that, you aren't necessarily giving them lots of attacks, and you're not really bumping them up other than the charge. So it's whether or not they're going to get locked in combat is the real question. For 155 points, you could take a unit of 3 Vargskyr that have got 4 wounds each for a 12 wounds on a 5-up armor save. They've got 3 attacks each, so that's 9 for the unit, +1 for the champion. So 10, 3s, rend 1, damage 2. You can put Deep Strike, and you can use the Hunger to heal some models up. But any 6s to hit are going to cause 2 mortal, are going to be 2 hits on the target instead of 1. So they're fast, movement 12, or deep striking, ogre balls, which is only a unit of 3. They're 155 points. So if you were to take it up to the natural unit of 6 you get for ogre gluttons, then they would be 310 points. So they'd be 50 points more than ogre gluttons. So they're not really worth it because gluttons are also terrible. So therefore not very useful. If you're going to deep strike them, there's better units to deep strike. If you're going to fight, there are better units to fight. If you're going to fly, there are better units to fly. They're expensive for what they do, and therefore I'm out. For 180 points, you can get the Warcry Warband, the Askurgan Trueblades. They've got 2 wounds each with a 4-up armor save, apart from 2 other models, which have got 4 wounds each. The champion's got 4 wounds, as has the Curse Blood, for a total of 20 wounds for the unit on a 4-up armor save, obviously with a 6-up ward save. They've also got the Hunger, so you can heal wounds into the unit, which is quite useful on those 2 4-wound models. Don't forget you can't return slain models, but you can definitely heal up those 4-wound models, which is quite nice. They've got the Gut-Wrenching Howl, which is the ability to apply the Strike Last effect on a unit once they've charged it. And they've got the ability that when they fight monsters, they can add +3 inches to their move, which is quite nice, and monsters are -1 to hit them. Overall, they're a very interesting unit. If you were to take them in the Kastelai subfaction, you could potentially take them up to having 29 attacks, at damage 2, which for 180 points feels quite good, but you have to have already achieved some things to do that. But we already know with the Kastelai buff, especially if you took Vhordrai, for example, you'd be able to potentially use another unit to go out and get the buffs and then apply it to the Trueblades first. Fighting Last is also really good as well because these guys get to hit. They're a really interesting unit. Honestly, I'm not 100% sold on them, but I'm also not against them. I think it could be quite fun. You can reinforce them, which is quite interesting because then you can obviously double stack those bonuses, which I quite like. But like, I like them, but I think maybe Graveguard just do the job better. But then they've got the vampire keyword, so they've got a load of buffs from the vampire keyword. Honestly, a very interesting unit. You might even be able to build combos around these, which I think is quite interesting. And then, yeah, very interesting unit. Really like these. For 310 points, you get the Bloodseeker Palanquin, which is legit a phenomenal miniature in my personal opinion. It's got 12 wounds and a 4-up armor save and moves 14 inches. So it feels like a really fast mobile combat unit. Only it doesn't really do any combat, which is the problem. So there's that. It is a wizard, though, and can cast a spell. It flies, which is nice, and it's got the hunger, so it can heal, which is really fun. It's got a promising concoction, which is an ability where the first time an enemy hero is slain by an attack made by this unit, which is a really hopeful ability because it's unlikely to happen. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly vampire units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. And you can carry out 2 different heroic actions with this unit, start the hero phase instead of 1, which you're not going to do because you're not going to put it on the board. It's got an ability called Wail of the Damned, which is in each of your shooting phases, roll a dice for each enemy unit within range. Range of this unit's Wail of the Damned ability. The range of this unit's Wail of the Damned is shown on the map, and it says it's 16 inches to start with, and then on a 4+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. So if you were to take multiples of these, you could do multiple Wail of the Damned, which is legitimately really interesting, but it's also going to be on the Mortis Engine. We'll talk about that in a minute because that's cheaper. And then it's got a spell called Blood Siphon, which is cast on 6. You pick an enemy hero within 12 inches and they take some mortal wounds. This is just bin, in the bin tier. Beautiful model, really let down by rules, which is super sad. Don't take it, don't buy it, don't. For 230 points, you've got the Mortis Engine. And the Mortis Engine kind of has this weird, like, feature in the list where it's either going to be auto-include in some builds, or you can build an incredible meme list around it. So 12 wounds with a 4-up save, 230 points, and it moves 14 inches. It's terrible in combat. That's not really what it's about. And it can fly. But it's got a couple of abilities. Now, it's got the aforementioned Wail of the Damned shooting attack that we talked about on the Coven Throne, which is in your shooting phase, roll a dice for each enemy within range, and it's 16 inches. On a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds. You can take multiple of these. You could have 4. So realistically, math-wise, you're going to be doing, and it's in the shooting phase as well. So in move 14, shoot 16. So you've got a 30-inch range. So really, you're going to be doing basically 2d3 mortal wounds to every unit within 16 inches, which is significant. That's if you were to take 4, but at 230 points, that would be 1,000 points. So it's a bit of a meme. However, it kind of adds on to the meme in that you can build the Mortis Bomb, which is using the reliquary. Anytime a spell is cast by a Soulblight Gravelords Wizard or a spell is unbound by a Soulblight Gravelords Wizard, you get to add one to the reliquary counter for each one of the Mortis engines that's nearby. And then up to a maximum of 6. And then once per battle in your hero phase, you can say that you'll it's literally the scene from Indiana Jones. You unleash it, you've got to be within 6 inches. And then whatever your counter is at, you do that many mortal wounds to each enemy unit within 6 inches. Now, of course, this is going to be really difficult to organize because it happens in your hero phase, which means you need to have already been in combat with them in the previous turn, and you've needed to survive. And with 12 wounds and a 4-up save, you probably haven't survived. However, it's 6 inches, so you can scream with some zombies, some dogs. Don't forget, you've got the summonable battle trait, so like you can summon units in front of. Keep summoning screens in front of them is kind of interesting, and then just keep pinging mortal wounds. So all of that is a like really fun meme build, and maybe incredible. But the main reason that I feel like this might be an auto include in some builds is because of the Nexus of Death energy, which is each time you pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelord summonable unit older than 12 inches of this unit, being the Deathly Invocation battle trait, you need to heal up to D3 plus 3 wounds allocated to that unit instead of 3, or you can return that many wounds. So it basically adds D3 on to these units, which is very, very strong. So that feels like if you're going for a summonable build where you're trying to like have ward saves, you're trying to rally units back into units, you're trying to like keep summoning units back in, it feels like the Mortis Engine is something you're going to want to do because it's going to affect each one of those deathly invocations. So, and you get 3. So that already is pretty powerful in my personal opinion, and that's great. So like, love that, and I think that's quite good. So you might see more of these on the table than you've ever seen before. For 275 points, you can get a Coven Throne, which is a hero, so it means it can take a command trait and an artifact. Got 12 wounds and a 4-up armor save, and is a vampire. So be careful late at night with your model. It's terrible in combat. It moves 14 inches and is a wizard, so it can cast a spell and unbind a spell. Probably the first thing we should talk about is the fact that it's got a really cool spell, fun with your friends, not necessarily fun in game. It's got a range of only 12 inches and it's cast on a 7, but you pick an enemy hero, take D3 mortal wounds. If you kill that hero, you get to set up a vampire lord within 3 inches of where it was slain. How awesome is that? That's pretty fun. And then we've got Tactical Insight. This unit can issue the same command up to 2 times. This is a special ability in the same phase. If it does so, each command must be received by a friendly Soulblight Gravelord summonable unit. So you won't be able to do it on vampires, only summonables. So double rallies, double all-out defense, which is quite nice. And you don't have to spend a command point for the second one. Normally, you can only do rally or all-out defense once in a phase, but this allows you to break that, which is quite engaging, maybe for your army, especially if you were going to do something with, I don't know, Graveguard, let's say, and you wanted to do a double command for them, like rallies or something. Thank you to Lord Oshawott for subscribing for the first time. Love that. It's also got the Hunger, so on its 12 wounds with a 4-up save, it is going to be able to heal some wounds back into it if it does some damage in combat, which, based on its profile, it will not. And finally, it's got the Scrying Pool, which is if you take the first turn in the current battle round, this unit can attempt to cast 1 extra spell in your hero phase. If you take the second turn in the current battle round, you receive an extra command point. So, extra command points or extra casts, a unique spell, and a very survivable caster, if you'd like to run a caster, has the ability to issue commands quite uniquely versus other units in multiples. 275 points for an opportunity cost. It feels like you know that you're always issuing 2 commands to units when you do it. So that's something to be really conscious of. You're building this into the list because you want this in the list to do the job that it does. And then an outside opportunity, you'd like to turn someone into a vampire lord. You maybe even could do that through a spell portal, which is quite fun. Because you could do the global spell to do 2 mortal wounds at range, do the D3, get a vampire lord in their backlines. Hilarious stuff. It's quite expensive. So I'm not necessarily super keen on it, and it doesn't overly integrate with the rest of the army. So not necessarily sure I'm a huge fan. A zombie dragon is 300 points. It's 14 wounds with a 4-up armor save, and it is just a combat monster. It's got the terror ability and can fly. The terror ability is Inspiring Presence, cannot be issued to friendly units within 3 inches of it. And that's pretty good because there's loads of big bricks of units that you maybe want to make it so they can't receive Inspiring Presence. So that's kind of an okay ability. 14 wounds on a 4-up save kind of makes it okay, but 300 points is way too expensive for its survivability. And its output is just average, unfortunately. So absolutely not worth the points. But you can put it into Deep Strike, which is cool and fun. And obviously it can be battle line in Avengorii, which is interesting, but it's not for me. The Terrorgeist, interestingly, doesn't have the Terror special rule. Weird. 14 wounds with a 4-up save and is 300 points. Moves 14 inches and is a combat monster with a unique shooting attack, which rolls a dice and adds a value in its chart. And then it sees what your bravery is, and at whatever it beats it by, then you do that many mortal wounds. So if you've got low bravery, it's fantastic. If you've got high bravery, not very good. It's got an okay melee profile with the potential to do 18 mortal wounds with a gaping maw. It's got 3 attacks with that. And if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by this fanged maw is a 6, then you do flat 6 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends, which is kind of fun and nice. So there's a lot of output potential there. And then finally, you've got Infested. This unit is destroyed before it's removed from play. Each enemy within 3 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. Ultimately, this is kind of cool, but it feels like really this should be having a mounted hero on top of it to make it more fun. 300 points is quite expensive, but it can do a lot of damage in the right situation. So yeah, and obviously you can use it better in Vengoriii. So there's that. Onto the White King, a summonable hero. So you will be able to use the ability to bring him back from the dead, which is pretty awesome. 5 wounds with a 3-up save. We love that. Love a 3-up save on a foot character. But he's slow and only moves 4 inches. He's got 5 attacks in close combat and any 6s to hit cause 2 mortal wounds in addition. So if he does end up in a fight, he's going to be slapping some fools. The Lord of Shambling Bones ability is very nice. It lets him pick either Death Rattle Skeletons or Graveguard and give them exploding 6s. Only 6s to hit are going to cause 2 wound rolls instead of just 1. And you can take multiple White Kings and do this multiple times, which is quite nice. Also, and I think this is really, really fun in my personal opinion, he's summonable, so you can also go in ambush. That's a really good point. One of my favorite things, if he's the general, then you can have Graveguard as battle line, which is kind of perfect, in my opinion. Graveguard are great. Love it. Okay, next up is another summonable hero. It's a White King, but this time it's on Skeletal Steed, and he's even beefier. 160 points, 7 wounds, 3-up save, moves 12 inches. Is pretty nominal in a fight, which is fine. He's got the King's Charge, which is after this unit makes a charge move, you could pick an enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice. On a 2+, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. But the real reason that we're really excited about him is because of the Lord of the Trampling Bones ability. You can reroll charge rolls for friendly Black Knights units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. And let me tell you, we love that. We love that. In addition, if a friendly Black Knight unit finishes a charge move wholly within 12 inches of this unit, the effect of its Deathly Charge ability triggered on a 4+ instead of 5. So I know what you're asking yourself, Rob, what the hell does that do? Well, the Black Knights, I'll just get the chat to tell me how many points the Black Knights are again, come in units of 5, okay? And in Legion of Blood, they will be battle line units, right? They're 110 points for 5. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. They're 5 models, and they're 2 wounds each. That's 10 wounds on a 5-up armor save. So I wouldn't describe them as particularly tanky, but for 110 points, you don't really care. They also move 5 inches, and they've got some pretty woeful close combat attacks with 2 attacks each. They've got a Standard Bearer that lets them reroll the Deathless Minions roll of a 1, which is fine. But the real trick is the Deathly Charge. Yes, the mounted White King, who I just talked about, is also summonable. So if you do make him your general, you are going to be able to summon him back if he is slain. The Black Knights are also summonable. So if you were to take them in Legion of Blood and have a unit of 15, then when it was wiped out, you would potentially be able to bring back a unit of 8 because you bring back half rounding up. Also, don't forget, if they're near an objective, you're going to be able to bring 3+1 wounds back. So basically 2 models of Black Knights to up to 3 units. Okay. Now, the real secret sauce is their Deathly Charge. Yeah, or as Double Bluffers called them, the Bone Grot Bounders. After this unit makes a charge move, you can pick one enemy within an inch of this unit, and if you do so, you roll 2 dice for each model in this unit. For each 5+, the target suffers a mortal wound. So you're saying to me, Rob, what is happening there? Like, okay, let me just run through it again, because this is crazy stuff. You got a unit of 5, and then you're near a White King. You charge in, that means you're going to roll 10 dice, 2 dice for each model in the unit, and then every 4+ is a mortal wound. That's incredible stuff. So that means you're going to be doing 5 mortal wounds straight away. If you have a unit of 15, that's 15 mortal wounds on the charge, and you've got to re-roll that charge to make sure you've got in successfully. They also move 12 inches, so they're also very fast. Yeah, that's amazing. And it's only cost you 330 points. Take 2 units of them, and you can do 30 mortal wounds on the charge, and then you get to re-roll those charges. And you've still only spent the price of a White King and 2 units of 15 Black Knights to be doing some crazy stuff. You can obviously get them locked in combat, which is a bit of a problem because they're not going to ever be able to fight their way out of it, but it's just all the damage all the time. Black Knights, phenomenal. Summonable, phenomenal. White King, summonable, phenomenal. Incredible. Gonna do, get the Black Knights out. That's what I'm saying. For 140 points, you get a unit of 10 Graveguard. They've got 1 wound each and a 5-up armor save, so they're not that survivable, but obviously with the ability to return models to units, then you can kind of take a little bit of damage and keep adding them back on. I would always take the Great White Blades on this unit if you're going to build these units, because they get 2 attacks each, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 1, but importantly, they're damage 2. And the reason that this is so important is because that damage 2 is something you can keep stacking more attacks onto in this army. You can get additional pluses to attack on the Great White Blades. I think you can get up to +2, might be up to +3. And they do have 2-inch reach. So even if you take a unit of 20 or 30, you should be able to attack with all of them, right? And we know we can got loads and loads of extra attacks on these because we can have extra attacks, then we can have exploding 6s, and they've got a special rule called Curse Weapons, where any 6s to wound are going to do mortal wounds in addition. The only thing that's a bit of a problem that I have is that it's Rend 1, and I would love to have seen them get Rend 2, because they can punch through some armor. But we're talking about a huge volume of attacks with potentially additional mortal wounds. They get to re-roll their Deathless Minion save, and they get automatic 6-inch charges thanks to the Musician. I love Graveguard. I think they're great. I think they're really, really good in this army because they bring something quite, not unique, but something really good, an absolute hammer unit that isn't really that expensive. 280 points for 20 will see you doing a lot of damage, in my personal opinion. So yeah, love them. The only other downside is they're slow. So something to think about. But they're summonable, so you can bring them out of the ground. If you have a unit of 20, you can bring a unit of 10 back, which is amazing. Yeah, Graveguard, more like Great Guard. The Necromancer is 90 points, 5 wounds on a 6-up armor save, but you don't have to worry about his survivability too much because he's got the Undead minion special rule, which means he gets to pass off wounds or mortal wounds to Soulblight Gravelords summonable units on a 4+. So he's a little bit more survivable, which is nice. Now, the Necromancer was actually so integral in Soulblight Gravelords this before, and he's definitely changed, and I can definitely see why some people would be annoyed, but he's still got a good ability, which is Van Hel's Dance Macabre. It's a spell. You cast it on a 6, and it's got a range of 18 inches. You choose a Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit, wholly within range, and it's locked in combat with an enemy unit. That unit can immediately fight. So you get a hero phase fight with a summonable unit. Now, it's not as good as piling an attack twice on a unit, but it does mean that you get to choose one that definitely is in combat and definitely activate it. And for 90 points, the opportunity cost, when it feels like this book is really trying to gear you towards buffing up summonable units in many ways, is something that's really good. If you're not running a bunch of Black Knights, then this just feels very positive in my opinion. Thank you to Refos for resubscribing. Appreciate you loads. Right, time to talk about zombies. It's 115 points for 20 zombies. They got a 6-up armor save, and they are bravery 10. Okay? They lost their immune to battle shock, so they now are going to take battle shock tests. So that's going to be a bit of an issue if you decide to pump them up to a unit of 60. They've got 2 attacks each that hit on 5s and wound on 4s, and they've got a couple of special abilities. They've got roll a dice each time a bond this unit is slain. On a 5+, you cause a mortal wound to the unit that slayed them. This is obviously only in melee, So a unit of 60 is going to do 20 mortal wounds back to the opponent. #murder rolls. The newly dead is at the end of the combat phase. You can roll a dice for each enemy model that was slain by wounds caused by this unit's attacks in that phase. For each 2+, you can add a dead walker zombie back. So this is quite interesting. If you go into an infantry army, then you are going to be getting loads of zombies back yourself. But where it gets really spicy is if you run it with a 70-point corpse cart. The corpse cart has got an ability called the Locus of Undeath, and it's very cheap. It's only 70 points. It's not very survivable, though, with 6 wounds and 6 up save. This allows you to have Deadwalker zombies wholly within 12 inches of it, do mortal wounds on 6s to hit. It also can either have a lodestone or balefire brazier. The lodestone is going to give +1 to caster wizards nearby, and the brazier is going to be -1 to enemy wizards. You're probably always going to take the lodestone. So 70 points will make your Deadwalker zombies do an amazing amount of damage, because while they've only got 2 attacks each, a unit of 60 is going to be 120 attacks. Oh, 6 is to wound, sorry. It's 6 is to wound, do a mortal wound from the corpse cart. Yes, 6 is to wound, which is really great because this means the Deadwalker zombies can get pluses to the number of attacks that they do. So we can stack exploding attacks on 6s to hit. We can stack a number of attacks on like the number of attacks. So we could have maybe 4 attacks. 6s to hit are going to explode, and then any 6s to wound are going to cause a mortal wound. But that's not where it ends, because in Legion of Blood you could even make them hit on 2s. And then the final piece of this puzzle is that if you do kill them, you're going to take mortal wounds in return, and they're going to return models into this unit from their ability. And if you finally wipe the whole unit out and take 20 mortal wounds for the privilege, you're going to be able to put a unit of 30 back on the board for another 10 mortal wounds the next time you wipe them out, which is great. Also, if you do cast a spell with a Necromancer, you will be able to fight in the hero phase. So amazing. Yeah, they don't explode when slain from battle shock. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Hordes of Deadwalker zombies, buffs all over them. They've got the summonable keyword. You can pop them up from grave sites. You can attack with loads of damage. You can overlap buffs. You can do murder rolls, #murder rolls, and then, yeah, zombies. Excellent. Sorry, I should have also mentioned very quickly when talking about the zombies, or because they're a summonable unit, you could have also give them a 5-up ward save. So while they're not that survivable, and you kind of want them to die to do mortal wounds, you can also give them a ward save. Oh, thank you to Moose Plus for donating £30 to the show. That's lovely. That's lovely. 5+ wards. 5+ ward save. Next up, we're going to be looking at dire wolves. They're 2 wounds each, and they've got a 5-up armor save, and they come in a unit of 10 for 130 points. So that's right. If you're keeping track, there's 20 wounds for 130 points. You can make them battle line or they be battle line. So then you can have them 390 points. They're going to get you 60 wounds. And as we just talked about with zombies, you can have a 5-up ward save on these dire wolves, which is very, very impressive. Don't forget, in the Vyrkos Dynasty, you're going to be able to add more dire wolves to this unit as well if you want to, which is pretty crazy. They also move 10 inches, so they're very fast, and they're summonable, so you can pop them out of the ground, which is very, very effective. They pile in 3 inches extra, so 6 inches from 6 inches away, so you can also pin units in, which is very good. And also, what that means is you can run as well. So when you can pile in an extra 3 inches, and from outside of 6 inches, that means, then you can run the unit 10 inches. You can move 10 inches, run 6 inches, and then pile in 6, which is pretty scary. So they're very fast. That means they're going to ignore standard shoot as well. The main reason you're going to take loads of direwolves is because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a direwolf block. You're trying to create loads and loads of pinning units and pin them in and then make it so that they can't get out of their deployment. And then when they finally kill 30 direwolves, you just bring 15 back, which is pretty crazy. Love that. Love that idea. Whether or not it'll work out, we'll see. But it's super exciting to see it happen. For 85 points, you can get 3 Fellbats. And they're 3 wounds each on a 6-up armor save. And they are summonable. So you can either put them in the ground, or even if one unit is slain, you can summon back a unit of 2. They're very fast, movement 14 inches. And they've got 3 attacks each, so 9 attacks in total. 4s and 4s, no damage. No rend, sorry, but damage 2. So, like, they'll do okay in a fight, but, like, not particularly good. I guess they're meant to harass something. I much prefer the Vyrkos Blood-born because they've got the pre-game move. But if you're not playing in Vyrkos, then maybe you want something that can move up the board. But then you've got grave sites for summoning. I think maybe you ignore these, I think. But they've got some abilities. They've got the hunger. If you do have one of them that's wounded and you have killed some models, then you can, of course, summon them, like heal them back. And then we've got single-minded ferocity. This unit can retreat and still charge later in the turn. In addition, at the end of any phase, if any models were slain by wounds caused by this unit's attacks in that phase, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's elongated fangs, taking them up to 4 attacks each. They're very fast, but they've got no save. I wouldn't take multiples of them. So they're a bit of a miss for me because the army should be able to go pretty fast. So I don't know why I would spend points on them, in my personal opinion. But there we go. Okay, on to some spice melange in this battle tome. Death Rattle Skeletons. You wouldn't really think it, but there's some spice here. They've got a wound each, and they have a 5-up armor save, and they come in units of 10 for 85 points. 85 points. So you think, Rob, that's not that impressive. With only 1 attack each, they hit on 4s, win on 3s, they've got no rend, and they're damage 1. But they do have more models than the opponent. They get to increase the rend characteristic from 0 to 1, which is kind of nice. As we talked about previously, you can stack loads of additional attacks on top of these because they are a summonable unit. So even if you slay the unit, you can bring them back. The real power, though, for this unit is the fact that they get to, at the start of the combat phase, roll a dice for each slain model from this unit. And it's not that happened in that turn or in a previous turn or any other turn. You can, on a 4+, you can return 1 slain model to that unit. So if you have a unit 30 and they're down to only 3, each combat phase, you're going to be able to roll 27 dice on 4-ups, bring them back. That seems very, very strong, especially when this summonable unit could definitely get a 5-up ward save, +1 to its deathless minions. It's got a standard bearer, which lets you reroll 1s for the ward rolls that you make for deathless minions. You have debuff spells, as we talked about earlier, reducing attacks and output from the enemy, so making them maybe more survivable as well. Ultimately, 30 wounds on a 4-up save isn't going to survive everything, but you could stick a Mystic Shield on them, all-out defense, and with that 4-up ward save, actually take quite a bit of damage, and then also return models each combat phase. So I think that's quite interesting as a unit, and I think people in the chat seem very, very excited about it. I weirdly feel like I'm more excited about zombies, because while these maybe don't die, the zombies are going to do output and then also cause output when they die. So I kind of like that, and the wound pool is heftier, which I think is quite good. But I think there's definitely going to be legitimately a place for these in lists and armies, and you don't have to paint as many skeletons as you have to paint zombies. I think is really good. So Death Rattle Skeletons, really good. Prince Duval is an interesting war cry, Underworld's warband. It's 220 points for Prince Duval and the Crimson Court. He's got 5 wounds of 3-up armor save, so quite survivable. He is a wizard and has got a spell which adds +1 to hit and wound against an enemy unit, but has got a very limited range of 6 inches. This casts on a 5. But +1 to hit, +1 to wound is legitimately a very good spell. He's got the hunger, so he can heal himself, and he's got the Come and Amuse Us then. At the start of the combat phase, if the unit and any friendly, the Crimson Court models are within 3 inches of the same enemy unit, your opponent must pick one of the following effects to apply. Prove the rend characteristic of this unit's possessed play by 1. Unit cannot be picked as the target of attacks made by melee weapons. And then the Crimson Court have got 3 wounds each on a 4-up armor save, and there are 4 models in the unit. They've got the hunger, so they can heal. They've got a number of damage to attacks. And when this unit makes a move, it can pass across terrain features. It moves 6 inches. So it's not wonderful, but I quite like it, Prince Duval and the Crimson Court. I think that's quite fun. I think they're quite fun. The spell's okay. I wouldn't ever take them in a list, but at least they're worth talking about. Oh, there are 3 models, sorry, in the Crimson Court, not 4. After all of the war scrolls, we get how this army scores points. And we have the grand strategies for these guys. And they have an easy one, and this is pretty much the only one we're talking about. Empire of Corpses. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you replace 3 or more friendly summonable units that were destroyed during the game. And you're just going to do that, I think. You might do Lust for Domination, which is when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you control more grave sites than your opponent. Control of grave sites is determined by the way, same way as you control objective, and you can control an objective and a grave site at the same time. And because you know where you're going to put those grave sites, that might be incredibly easy to do. But Empire of Corpses feels like the good one. The battle tactics are brilliantly easy, which is good. Callous Overlords is pick one friendly summonable unit within 3 inches of all enemy units. You complete this tactic if that friendly unit is destroyed during this turn. So maybe you take the Fellblats, yeet them up, and just have them killed. Maybe take some zombies or something else and just charge them into the enemy killer unit and have them die. Cursed Unlife. You complete this tactic if any wounds allocated to your general or 2 other friendly vampire units are healed using the Hunger ability this turn. If you have 2 vampires, this is a super easy one in my opinion. Yeah. The Grasping Dead. Pick one friendly summonable unit within 3 inches of any enemy units. Complete this tactic if they're still there at the end of the turn. They're just very good for skeleton warriors. They just get in a fight, stay in a fight. They stay there. That's great. Then you got the Choicest Vintage. Pick one enemy hero on the battlefield. You complete this tactic if that enemy hero is slain during this turn by an attack made by a friendly vampire hero. Really good if you've got the right vampire hero to do the killing. That's pretty useful. Expand the Grave Empires. Complete this tactic if you control 2 or more objectives wholly outside your territory. And each of those objectives contested by a friendly summonable or vampire unit. Again, very achievable. Literally hold an objective or 2. And then finally, Endless Nightmare. Pick one friendly Soulblight Gravelords summonable unit on the battlefield. Complete this tactic if 6 or more slain models will return to that unit during this turn. This is particularly good with skeleton warriors, as we've talked about, because of their ability to heal. Okay. And that's it. That's the book. That's everything. Now, there's lots still to talk about with this book, but at the start of the book, there was a lot of opinions that this book wasn't particularly good, and I think this book is a pretty good book. There are loads and loads of units that you don't even need to bother reading. Most of the Vyrkos special characters are pretty worthless reading, and it's a bit killer to read them all, to be honest. Let's talk about how the army will probably play. Number one, it's got very, very good primary objective holding units. Skeleton warriors, zombies, direwolves, black knights are all going to be really good for holding objectives and screening. So you're going to have what we call really good board control. Lots of board presence because you can have lots of units. And even when those units are killed, you're going to be able to bring them up to inside of 3 inches of the enemy, which is really going to piss off the enemy. So they're good. They have a very easy to achieve grand strategy and easy to achieve book tactics. And they also achieve book tactics really well because in this GHB specifically, because they've got teleports and other things which are very effective. So a strong primary game and a strong secondary game. So that means that you are going to score lots of points. Now you get into the chess element of the game, which is can you kill enemy units? And that is a little bit more ropey in my opinion. I like the Black Knight list for doing all the mortal wound impact hits. That seems quite interesting. Graveguard definitely can slap, but they can't take a hit, which is going to be pretty cool. You do need to do a load of overlapping buffs, which can be, I guess, a little bit challenging. And you don't necessarily have tons and tons and tons of rend in the army. And the mortal wounds that you do have are very specific, and they're on units that can get killed fairly easily. So it's a weird movement-based board control army that has got units that can do lots of damage, but you need to orientate a lot of synergies to make that happen. That actually is quite good. That means the book has got what we call a high skill cap. You are able to also build some fairly strong alpha armies and throw a bunch of units in really early. Alpha combat or alpha pinning, which is quite interesting, and I quite like that as well. You've got some nice units for pre-game moves, for holding objectives. Pretty fun. You've got very good spells. You have very good artifacts. Legion of Blood really feels like a standout, although they really want you to play Vyrkos, and actually Vyrkos has got so many synergies that kind of I can see lists being played with that. And then I think Legion of Night, with its teleport and its ability to move away, might see quite a bit of play as well. Yes, please, Lovity. So overall, yeah, I'm going for a pretty good book. Do I think it's an S book like Beasts of Chaos are currently? I'm going to go for no. I think it might struggle into quite a few different armies. But I think overall, maybe a lot of shooting might be its downfall. But I think it's fast enough and it's pretty good. So I'm going to give it like a solid B at the moment. That's why I'll rate it. But We haven't written any lists out yet, and it does sound like running loads of Black Knights could be literally hilarious. So I love that. That sounds very fun. And I really like the idea of running that Legion of Blood Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. So I hope you enjoyed this. I want to thank the Twitch chat who've been here with me during this 12-hour review. If you did like this, then you can obviously support the show by liking, subscribing, and joining Patreon, the Honest Wargamer Patreon. If you do that, that would be super wicked. And I try and bring you as much quality content as I can because it means a lot to me, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoy your Soulblight Gravelords army, and I want to know what you think. So the comments are your space to tell me what you think, and I'll listen.